confirming apologies. I have apologies from Councillor David Smith. I think that's all the apologies, though. Okay, thank you. Item 2 is minutes, and we have minutes from our previous meeting. Does anybody have any queries? That was the 18th of January, by the way. Has every cabinet member had a chance to look at the minutes? Are you happy with them? Any suggestions of corrections or amendments at all? No? Okay. The minutes are agreed, is that right? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 3. Can I ask if any cabinet member has any declaration of interest in an agenda item? No, I think they were all clear. In terms of item 4, we have one item there, which is to welcome a public speaker. A reminder to speakers this evening, the 3-minute speaking slots. The purpose of these is to make statements, alternatives, suggestions, possibly questions. We're grateful to all officers who we know have extended time to opposition members to have time to consider alternative proposals they may want to put through. So presumably anything that comes forward will be tried and tested. We ask you, if you can, to avoid repeating perhaps what a previous speaker says, but we're very welcome. You're very welcome along, and we're glad to have a number of speakers listed. Our one member of the public speaking, and we welcome first of all, is a Miss Susie McLernan. Ms. McLernan, hello there, welcome. Would you like to come, if you would like to come to the table there, there's a microphone there, please come forward. And just to guide you, that if you take a seat there, there's a button in the middle of the microphone at the bottom. Once you see the light come on, please, thank you, Ian, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please take your time and welcome along.
Oh, yeah.
You're speaking, of course, on item 8, which is the final budget, I think, aren't you? No, take your time to get everything ready. Thank you.
Right then, presume my time starts now. Cool. Good evening all. I'd like to address some issues within the financial strategy. First of all, I'd like to recognise the need for careful budgeting after the fiasco of the last council. However, the budget must not be so cautious as to create unnecessary suffering when funds could be constructively used to support the most vulnerable in our society. With this in mind, I'd like to ask, can a council justify a council tax increase of 3.34% on South Northants compared to the 2.29% for Northampton, and have the audacity to average it out so as to avoid a democratic referendum? West Northants Council seems to forget about rural poverty, and this increase in the face of reduced services, including an extra charge of £42 for green bin collections, an absence in villages of youth or family support services, coupled with the rising living costs and energy costs, and also the woefully inadequate bus services, will quite literally leave many people out in the cold and unable to access help or even food banks. And this brings me to the subject of social care. Social care is failing in Northamptonshire and in West Northants as well, with 14-month waits for children's diagnoses in mental health and over 2 years for adults. Adult ADHD and autism services are almost non-existent, and mental health services are not fit for purpose, with huge staffing gaps forcing a crippled running and leaving many vulnerable and disabled people subject to harm. Will WNC look again at its budget, become a living wage employer, and ensure adequate funds are supplied to social care, recognising the impact of the rising costs of living and inflation on personal care budgets and on staff retention, especially frontline staff, most of whom are on minimum wage, with the additional funding ensuring high standards of care are maintained? How can people afford assistive technology devices when they must choose whether to heat or eat? Finally, and certainly not least of all, will West Northants Council recognise the desperate need for greater support for schools and children's services? Will it recognise how vital the lifelines of breakfast clubs, wraparound care and SEND services are? For many children, their school dinner will be the only meal of the day, and the school holidays a time of state-enforced starvation. Will West Northants Council pledge and fund the pledge to end food poverty in West Northamptonshire? West Northamptonshire has considerable reserves. They must serve the residents. When I've heard disabled households say it is cheaper to buy candles than turn on the lights, and that they cannot use their electric medical devices because of energy costs. When I've heard low-income constituents wonder how to feed their children, I question how they or I can have faith in a council who make pledges based on guesswork and services run on prayers and shoestring budgets. Will West Northants Council give us solid reasons to have faith in them?
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. I might please stay there for a moment because I might ask a few colleagues to comment on some of the things that you've said, if that's helpful. I mean, some general comments, but my colleagues will have more specific knowledge. The harmonisation of the council tax is not, from our legacy councils being put together. It's what the government have told us to do, and they tell us how to represent it. I don't think it's something we certainly wouldn't want to misrepresent what's happening on the average increase situation. We're caught in a process that probably none of us wanted necessarily. We have it, and that's what we're doing. We have to do it. I think poverty is really important. Matt may tell us a little bit more about anti-poverty, tremendously important. And somebody who grew up in the villages of Northamptonshire, West Northamptonshire, I know how poverty is out there, and it isn't just a city problem. You mentioned buses and transport poverty. Phil might want to make a comment on that. Fuel poverty as well. Totally aware. Perhaps we'll ask other colleagues to come in. Fiona might want to speak on children's and schools, Matt on adults and poverty. The living wage, I'm going to ask Mike to make a comment on that actually, which you mentioned. I think the overall thing, Malcolm might comment on the overall thing with reserves. We do come from a legacy of financial challenges, particularly around the county council. Reserves are there for what they can bring, not just to hide treasure and so on. We have got to what we now feel, or what we are guided is the right level of reserves, but that money needs to work for people. It's not just about filling chests full of money, and I accept that, but we have to ever be mindful of where we came from, which is a council that ran out of money. Others might want to comment. Let's go around. Matt, I think you were indicating that you were going to comment.
Well, yeah, no, thank you. Just to make the point, we've put a lot of effort into our anti-poverty strategy, which we made a priority as a brand new council to do. And this will be coming to council within the next couple of months, and it will be going out to consultation. And one of the key points we've made right from the start is to make sure it reaches out and covers rural issues as well. So there will be an opportunity to give an opinion on anti-poverty and some of the points raised there. But that is something we're taking, and Cabinet knows, extremely seriously, and we're, putting a lot of stock into it. And it's going to be something that is going to, the West Northants Health and Wellbeing Board is going to be the sort of one of the key focal points to receive the strategy, as well as us as a council. And it's something we're taken very seriously. So there'll be that opportunity to respond to the consultation. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks, Matt. Anybody else want to chip in on any of those other areas? Mike, you going to make a comment?
It was a quick question. You referred to the living wage. I'm presuming that you're referring to the Living Wage Foundation's recommendation, which is currently £9.90.
I was referring more to the £10 rate that was decided a number of years ago by the Conservative government as recognised being the living wage for then. Obviously, since then, we've had considerable inflation. If any of you have kept up with Jack Monroe and how inflation actually affects the poorest people, it's disproportionate. So 5% for the wealthiest people is a lot less than 5% for the poorest people in terms of actual and real costs. So I would say the living wage is probably more. At the moment, I don't have an exact figure that's current. I've forgotten to write it down, therefore can't bring it right now.
It might be helpful. Well, the figure that scrutiny referred to in their work, leader, through you was £9.90, which is the figure that's currently referenced by the Living Wage Foundation, which is I think a body that a number of councillors look to. So it was just worth clarifying.
Yeah,
whether it was that body that
work
you
as a
were
carer for disabled adults, and over this last 2 years, and even before then, I've had to be a mental health counsellor. I've had to be a cleaner. I've had to do personal hygiene help, which is part of my job, not a problem. But the level of emotional and mental labour I'm having to put in to find alternative therapies, find support, write letters, and actually fight for the rights of the people I look after is ridiculous. And I'm paid minimum wage for that. I'm taking work home. I'm supposed to do 20 hours a week. I do more like 35, 40, and I have my own disabled son to look after. And I'm actually looking for another job because I cannot sustain my job on my wage with costs as they are, and we're already short of care staff. The only reason I've stayed this long is because there's currently no one to replace me to look after the people that I genuinely care about.
No, and thanks for what you do. And I think we might come on to that topic of living wage later on. So please stay for the actual item.
There's little doubt that the care profession is not a well-paid profession, whether you do that for the council, whether you do that privately. We know that. There's a couple of things like the £600 bonus thing that's in now. It's not the be all and end all. It's something we hope to have reflected, and you'll hear something a little bit later that shows that we recognise a little bit more moving in the right direction. There is little doubt that more needs to be done nationally and locally. That's an agenda we're hoping to push forward, specifically with something that Mike's going to mention a bit later about living wage. Is there any other comments on any of the other things at all? Buses, Phil, maybe? We said a bit about buses before, haven't we? Anything on children's? Fiona, are you going to chip in?
I just wanted to assure you that I think in the same way as you, that we have got a lot of work to do in the SEND section of our children's work, and we are doing a complete overhaul of that system at the moment. Today I've spent 3 hours talking about SEND. We are looking at it very, very seriously, and we hope to be able to announce very soon new measures that we're putting in place.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. And Adam, you were going to make some comments?
Yeah, just on the bus services side of things, we know that rural isolation is greatly exacerbated by a lack of decent public transport. So recently we have put together what's called a bus service improvement plan, guided by the government and some additional
Can I ask you
funding.
just to speak up a bit?
Sorry,
I'm actually deaf in one ear, so
my
I'm
apologies.
struggling to-
Yep. So we have put together what's known as a bus service improvement plan, guided by a government scheme to start enhancing rural transport and indeed urban transport. So we're hopeful that that will lead to improvements across the more rural areas of West Northants. I represent Bugbrook, which is a collection of large and small villages. We lost a couple of bus services during the county council days. We're hoping now to see some of those reinstated. So we know that there is a problem on that front, and we are looking actively to start reinstating and improving bus services to address exactly the problem you outline.
Thank you.
None of these things will be the final answer, though. They're a start on all of them. And I think the purpose for wanting just to expand a little was to show you that we're aware of the issues. There are some things that are happening. There's a load more to do. And so the final things are promised, really, we'll keep at it. And your comments have been heard.
Yeah, my concern has just been the speed at which things or how slow things can be.
Yep.
It's all very well saying, yes, in the next meeting or next few months, we'll have a strategy, but that's little consolation to the child who's looking to no dinner today,
Yep.
or the elderly person who's sitting in their freezing front living room, wondering when they're going to see somebody and whether they should eat tonight or save those
Yep.
last few vegetables for tomorrow.
Sadly, that's the life we sign up for. Things can't happen overnight. That's really sad. And everybody you see sat around this table and the wider tables, our opposition members, we do what we do because we want the world to be better. And we get frustrated as heck at the speed things can be done, at the fact that there isn't, there is a finite amount of money and everything else. Promise you, if we could do it quicker, we would. The speed we can do, we are doing it. Promise you, these are priorities.
Yes,
Can I
you.
thank you again for your comments?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have no specific urgent business under item 5. Let's move to item 6. This is revenue monitoring. Malcolm will ask just to summarise the report. We have 3 speakers there in the order of Councillor Roberts, Councillor Bearsworth, and then Councillor Harris. Malcolm, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would comment, actually, I was going to comment for the lady that's just been speaking regarding, you did mention reserves. You did, can you hear me? Just, well, okay. I'll start because it's in this report anyway. What you probably, you won't know this, but I spent the last 3 years in NCC building up reserves because of the difficult position we found ourselves in. So I know quite a bit about that. And what you do have to appreciate, so if you do this job, then that you do need some reserves. And for your information, roughly 65%, 63%, that sort of thing, of our reserves are ring fenced. That means they're specific. We can't spend them on anything else other than that particular topic. And we actually have, therefore, £40 million worth of reserves. And that for an operation our size isn't particularly big. things can go, pear-shaped quite quickly in this sort of thing. So that's, it's not all a stack of cash set in a cupboard somewhere. So I thought you ought to know that before we go. Okay, my pleasure. Right, so turning to period 9, which is the end of the third quarter results. If you're looking at the on page 13, probably the best summary we've got. And what that shows is that we're looking at a 2.9 overspend if we ignore the £5 million which we had as contingency. So the net effect is that we would end up with a 2.1 million underspend if everything stays as is. Now that's been, but having said that, we're now into the last quarter. The last quarter is always the quarter when we look at contingencies, reserves, things like that, and we officers quite correctly, in my view, take a prudent view, and the reality always prevails in the fourth quarter. So we would be looking to see that 2.9 reduce over these next few months. We know one or two thoughts of where that will come from. Bearing in mind now, as we sit here now, we're just a little bit over 6 weeks away from the year end anyway. So we're as good as the year's over. So I would expect that 2.9 to drop, and unless something absolutely catastrophic happens, which we're not seriously expecting, will come. The centrally controlled budget is the key one there, in that, and that's picks up all the bad news that doesn't go anywhere else. And there's things like some legacy issues on audits from NBC and NCC. There's an MRP issue. I won't bore you with that because it's a technical point. And there's a pay rise we put in, so that's come centrally as well. But all in all, given that, we're expecting it to improve a little by the year end, and end up with a small surplus this financial year. It would so that's how I see it at the moment. The HRA budget, which is a separate budget in many ways, that's a housing revenue account for those that aren't familiar with that situation. That's inherited and business as usual. There's no reason, I think, that expect that won't come up on plan as it currently showed. So the position this year is that we're looking for a balanced budget, a little bit of a surplus. One or two issues. What's happened this year is quite interesting because we put in the £5 million contingency on the basis that we inevitably would find things we didn't expect. There's quite a lot of discussion at the when the budget was put together with Rebecca and myself, and anyway, it was put in, and the right thing to do, as it's turned out, because things do come out of the woodwork, and we think all the issues are now fully understood this year, but there probably be some next year as well. Coming out always is something. So we're looking in good shape at this year end. A few things to look at. Corporate services need a bit of a dust up. Adults, very difficult because of the COVID situation. Chief exec's budget, as items didn't get transferred. And the COVID fund is looking neutral, and that's all the detail that's in the report. So I think that's probably all I can say on that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's bring our speakers in for this item, and the first of which is Councillor Roberts. Emma, welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, for the report. Taking a look through the items, we've got 3 out of 6 directorates coming in over budget, mainly as a result of increased pressures and demand for services post-COVID, it would appear. But nearly every directorate is reporting savings and underspendings due to vacancies, and it feels like vacancies are propping up the budget again, and we have raised that before. There's lots of sentences like costs are offset by vacancies. And whilst those vacancies seem to be saving us some funds at the moment and enabling the budget to balance, we're in a position where we're going to have staff pressures, service pressures, and continued real serious risk to the council functionality, not just the council budget, as a result of those continued vacancies. And I don't yet see any real plan in respect of that. As far as transformation is concerned, which features somewhat within the budget, I understand there's likely to be some changes in respect of how transformation is developed or how we deal with that within the authority. But I think we've paid around 2.9 million so far, but what are we seeing? What are we getting? We've got a huge way to go with disaggregation of services. And there doesn't seem to be any real progress being made on transformation. And I'm not clear that the report or any of the other reports give us details about what the effectiveness of the service actually is. It seems that being short-staffed, as I said earlier, is saving us money. Disaggregation is costing us money. And at the same time, adult services is still 2% over budget. So we've got some real risks that are concerning. Housing and communities are saving us money, but we're not filling any vacancies, it would appear. And that seems like a really odd way to work. I think in short, it's lack of staffing is yet again appearing as a short-term solution, but it's going to cost us longer term. It may not be the appropriate place to ask the question, so forgive me, Councillor Longley, if I get this wrong, but there's no mention of the pension fund in the report, and I understand we inherited debt on this fund. Has that now been cleared, and are we still indebted? Is there any detail you can give us on that? And you also provided a report or a conversation at full council around the investigations you were making into the pension fund and climate change. I appreciate that that's not referenced specifically within your report, but haven't had any update. You were going to send me the paper, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to ask.
Thank you. Malcolm, any comments on any of those points?
Yeah, sure. Right, well, the vacancies, there's always vacancies, and each directorate will speak for themselves on that. We always put in a percentage for vacancies because that's what happens. You know, you can debate what that will be. But if you look in the budget, you'll see, and if you look at the detail, when we talk to Danielle and Jonathan on a regular basis, and that detail is available, and that's probably best talked to offline on that, because it's quite a complicated issue. It'd take all night, so I won't do that. Right, transformation, absolutely. Now look, I bang on about productivity and transformation every time I get the opportunity. It's the way to improve living standards. We all know that, and so whenever I get the opportunity, at every budget meeting, every year, and every opportunity, I bang on about it. It's so important. And I've looked at the savings figure there, and we've not hit the target I'd like to have done. It's 10 million out of 13. Well, okay, that's not bad given the COVID, I guess, but that's the sort of numbers we're talking about. And I would have liked to be in 20, but there you are. Now, on the pension fund, I'm not aware of debt there. I mean, the pension fund's in absolute robust condition, excellent condition. Last time I spoke, which admittedly was a few weeks ago now, we were talking 107% covered. Well, that's a pretty good number in my book. And now we talked about the green climate change. What I did say there was, you may recall, is that we'd recognized it months and months ago, 6-8 months ago now, I can't remember exactly. And there would be a detailed submission of what we intend to do in practical terms. That's what's necessary, that's what's required. And now that comes out at the pension subcommittee. Now that's not due yet, so you can't have the papers because you haven't got them, neither have I. So that's the key meeting. And because that's when we'll decide or not, or I don't know what the outcome will be, but I'm guessing we'll go with it. So that's the answer to that one.
Okay, Chair, with your indulgence, could I just clarify that point, Councillor Longley, because I thought you'd said at full council, and forgive me, I need to go back to my notes that were written on the evening, that you had commissioned a report into that work, and you had that report, and you were going to be able to provide us that report. You said you'd commissioned a report, and Councillor Harris is nodding at me. So
what we commissioned was a report that recognised the position and what the implications would be if we did this or we did that or we did the other. And that was the implications. We now then go to the subcommittee who have to make the decisions what we're actually going to do.
I'm only after the original.
We can also
you get the
update as well,
nuance?
actually. I think Chief Executive has some comments to make on this one. Anna, were you going to chip in on it?
So I was just going to say, and Malcolm may not know this actually, because a lot of members have asked questions about what is the policy and the responsible investment from this. So Mark Whitby, who's the head of pensions, has already agreed that following the subcommittee, he'll do a full briefing for any members, North or West, because North have asked the same, on the climate strategy and responsible investment strategy that's agreed out of the subcommittee, and then tell you how you keep track of what they're doing, because they're also setting up some special like web advice type thing where you can see what investments are being made. But we're going to set that up so that any member can be walked through what the policies that get adopted are.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Beardsworth. Sally, over to you.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, we've just heard a very impassioned plea from the young lady who spoke early tonight, and I really do have some concerns about her situation and people like her who work for our people that are old and vulnerable in jobs that are very, very poorly paid. And often people leave because they can't afford to do the job, not because they don't love it, but it is a vocation to look after somebody that's in need, and we should be rewarding that. And I really do have worries that one of the things in the report was the delayed discharge from hospital, because we don't have enough social workers or social care to look after people who are in hospital. So it costs us money to keep people in hospital longer than they need to be, which is bad for them, and it's bad for us because it costs us money. So to me, it's a false economy to not be paying a living wage to the people that are looking after the most important people, which is our grandparents, our fathers, our mothers, our wives, whoever that need care. I have that concern because I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think we need to look at that quite seriously. And I'm hoping you will do tonight when you hear the corporate scrutiny report. Also, there are the issues over national insurance that's coming up in April. And could you tell me what precautions you've made about that in the budget? Because that's going to cause problems with people that work for the organisation. We're going to have to pay a percentage of their national insurance. And I don't know when a national insurance kicks in, but I'm sure people on a very low wage pay some of it as well. So that in itself is going to cause even more of a problem for people who are looking after our old and vulnerable. So those are the two main points. A lot of it, as you say, I don't want to repeat what Emma's saying about vacancies, you've covered that. But I just feel that it's so important that we get people to work in these. If they want to work in these jobs, we should be allowing them and paying them a wage that they can live on.
Just thank you, Sally. Obviously, you've talked more about next year's budget. This is revenue monitoring. Does that mean, do you need to speak on the budget now? Have you made your points?
That but also on the fact that the delayed discharge is costing us money.
Yep.
Because we don't have people in the service to discharge people from hospital to look after them. So it's a knock-on effect. And also the national insurance, what sort of things going to happen with that?
Okay. Malcolm, did you want to comment at this point, Malcolm, or?
I will briefly, but there's not much I can say about the national insurance other than we've got what's necessary in the budget. I mean, we're bound to do that. It's none of us wants to pay more national insurance, and but it'll be what it'll be, I'm afraid. So I can't do anything about that one. I would go on to the wage, and I think that the wages are what they are in here. That's we're reporting what's happening. And I think the rather more important issue here is to then turn to what the budget is and where we're going. And I think we'll come to that. And I'll come to that point there, I promise you. Okay.
As well, Chair, if we could, as an authority, maybe write to our peers in government to say that the national insurance increase will be a huge disadvantage for us as a council, but also the residents of Northampton West. So I think we need to be putting that in writing. I think other authorities have done that already. I don't know if we have.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Harris. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, everyone. Again, my questions relate, I believe they relate to monitoring, but they are quite specific. So apologies for that in advance. I'm interested to try and get an understanding. It's linked to the COVID funding. Obviously, we made a decision as a council to allocate some funds for councillors to use for recovery grants. We're fairly close to the end of the year, and I just wondered if I could be given an update on where we've got to with that in terms of spend and allocation. And obviously with a view to what may happen to those funds if they're not allocated. I think it was 232,500 was the original figure. That's the first question. The second question, again, it does relate to monitoring, but it's slightly nuanced, and it picks up on a point from the speaker who spoke so eloquently earlier on in the public section. And Councillor Humphreys, had she been able to be here this evening, would have asked this question. She has raised this point, but is still waiting for an answer. And it's in regard to the Household Support Fund. It refers in the winter fuel element to only those people with prepayment meters, and it excludes potentially people in rural areas who obviously use oil because they have no other means. And some of those people in rural areas also are struggling with the sky-high prices of oil. So it's a question about whether or not that criteria is going to be updated and amended to reflect that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to comment, Adam?
Yeah, just to clarify to Councillor Harris on that last point, I am chasing revenue and benefits regarding why and how they've interpreted the government's criteria for allocating those payments, because I see some inequity in the way that those funds have been allocated. We both know as members representing rural areas that there are a great number of residents, Rothersthorpe, for example, in my patch, who rely on fuel oil, and the price of that has escalated quite dramatically over the past few months. And if we can find a way of supporting people reliant on that source of fuel, then I believe we should do.
So we perhaps get a note out to members more widely when we've got a bit more clarity around it, Jonathan. Thank you. Malcolm, was there some points you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I was going to say I don't know on that, the answer to the second question there, Jonathan, but I wouldn't know that. Right, the first question on the COVID grant position, then this isn't the general public knowledge yet because we haven't agreed as a cabinet. So, but what we have done is that we've made provision in next year's budget for it to be carried through. Now, if cabinet don't agree that, then it won't happen, of course. But that's we've made the financial provision. We'll see what happens. But I'd be surprised if it didn't, wouldn't you?
So it will carry over to where spend, assume subject to agreement where that spend has not yet been made effectively.
I'd be very surprised if it didn't.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. And are you able to give an indication as to how it's actually going so far, which was my other point?
Surprisingly slowly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, next time we meet up, we'll give you some detail on that. But it surprised me how slowly. That's why, because we thought it all be gone in a flash. But
yeah,
not so.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, that's great. So that's the last of our speakers on item 6. Anybody want to raise any other queries? Mike.
Yeah, just a comment really on the monitoring regards to corporate services. The line people said, "Oh, is it vacancies or what is it?" Well, actually, in terms of our bit, it's not really vacancies at all. The lion's share of it actually relates to an income target, which was essentially set by the county council that carried over in the shadow for the IT department, and effectively almost sort of, guns for hire, as it were, for the IT department. When I've looked at that, I don't think it's realistic in the current environment at all because of security implications, and that I don't think there's a market there to hire those guys out as guns for hire at all. They've got more than enough work to be concentrating on. So what you'd see if you saw the detail of that in the budget for next year is the target's gone. So we're not going to put in a target that we're going to miss. And obviously, Councillor Longley already aware of it, but I thought it was just worth mentioning that is the lion's share of that is made up of a missed income target that we're going to get rid of because we'll never hit it.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments at all? Okay, in which case we thank Malcolm for the report, which we note. Recommendations of the report. Are those recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 7. This is the period 9 General Fund Capital Monitoring. Malcolm, back with you. We've then actually, on this item, we've got 3 speakers also, Councillors Al-Wahabi, Beardsworth and Harris. Malcolm, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I'm not going to dwell too long on this other than to recommend everybody read how we now handle capital projects, because when we first started off, we had, I think it was 220, I think I'm right, could possibly fund. And so we now have a very robust situation, and the criterion is in the report. And in fact, what's happened is that a lot of the stuff we inherited is going through. Some we've rejected, and so you need to read the report to come up with a view. Any detailed requirement on a specific capital, I'm not proposed to go through tonight because it wouldn't be appropriate. It's a board strategy view, but I'd be very, very happy to answer any questions if you want to email myself or Martin after this meeting. So I think that's probably the best way of leaving this, Chair, because it's such a lot of detail, and everybody will have their pet subject, I suspect, as we all have. And I think I'd like to think that the report is fairly explicit.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. Let's move to our speakers then. So first of all, Councillor Al-Wahabi. Jamil, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the items listed for capital spend are project inherited from our previous councils, like the Town Centre Cinema in Daventry, like the grant to aid volunteer services, again, Daventry, and Community Youth Provisions, Daventry. I applaud Daventry District Council for looking after its town so well. Going forward, are we going to have quality we can be a spend matches needs across WNC? I would like to understand more about the spend on the old Black Lion pub in Northampton. 150,000 of this is Section 106. Surely this has to be of benefit to the local community, but as far as I can see, there is no benefit to us. There is a further 315,000 from the town fund for the Black Lion pub. What is this for? When that gets allocated? Why is there no mention of the Heritage Park that we are promised? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who wants to comment on that? I think it's fair to say that we consider the Heritage Park to be the separate projects over the road. Lizzie, sorry, you're going to comment on that?
Yeah, the Black Lion pub was obviously discussed at great extent as a previous cabinet, which obviously you didn't raise at that time. But the money for the Black Lion pub has come from a number of areas. Okay, so Section 106, Heritage Lottery Fund, Towns Fund. Okay, heritage impact has been considered in that development activity and will be considered going forward. It's part of our overriding strategy for development in Northampton, and heritage is an integral part of that. So rest assured that the heritage folk have and will continue to input into all the development activity to do with Northampton Town Centre.
Okay. So the question is, where's the money for the Heritage Park then? Yes. Right. Where is the money that will be spent for it? Do we?
So the Heritage Park will be spent through the town's fund at some stage, but it's not actually been allocated yet. It is not on the priority list. It is on the action list, okay?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
In short, and we've one to approve later, the town's fund money has to come through cabinet to approve it. It's government money that can be only spent on the projects it's given for.
Right.
We have already done a couple of projects like 78 Turngate, but there's others to come through cabinet just yet, isn't there? Which will include the Heritage Park. Is that?
So that the Heritage Park is in the pot, if you like, to be looked at, but we haven't got to it yet. It has to go through quite a lengthy business case process. And at the moment, there are issues with the Heritage Park as to what we're going to be doing with it. And they will be discussed at a further cabinet meeting, but I can't go into the details now because we're in the middle of going through the business case with Hatch and other organisations that work with us on this project. Okay, but rest assured, we will be bringing it to cabinet and we will be going through it in detail when we have a sound business case, which includes the financials, the economic and the heritage aspects, but we will not bring it until we are ready. Obviously, we have a timeline on when that money can be spent.
Right.
So the sooner we bring it, the sooner we can get things going, but we are not at that stage yet. It is not in the priority list yet, but it will be in the future.
Right.
Are we still doing the opposition briefing groups?
We are still doing the opposition briefing group. Sadly, the attendance has been pretty poor, but there have been technical issues to do with technology, people saying that they can't get into those. But every month, prior to any project going to the Oversight and Delivery Board, there is a subgroup which involves the town centre, okay, the town centre folk, and then also Lib Dems, Conservatives, Independents, and Labour. And there's a cross section that actually meet every month to go through the plans. All right. And if you're interested, I'm sure one of your colleagues would be happy to swap with you if you wanted to sit in on one of those, particularly when it's related to that area. Okay. But also, can I just say, Kevin is very happy. This is Kevin Langley, who heads up this whole area. Kevin is very happy if you wish to contact him direct at any stage to discuss a particular concern that you may have. We want to make this work, trust me.
Absolutely. Adam, are you going to make a comment?
Yeah, just picking up on the comment about a couple of the capital schemes in Daventry. Obviously, as a former Daventry District Council member, I identify those as a couple of schemes that have been subject to slippage. They were funded by DDC, but I think moving forward, I think it's worth remembering that under the Constitution, we all have a duty to serve in the best interest of the whole of West Northamptonshire, not just our own patch, which obviously we'll all speak up for as individual ward members. But I think we can take great pleasure actually in looking down this list and seeing projects taking place in Towcester, in Daventry, in Brackley and in Northampton. There has to be an equitable spread, and I think we should relish spending in our market towns and our villages as well as in the county town.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker, Councillor Beardsworth.
Chair, can I quickly declare an interest, please?
Sorry, Mike, please.
Apologies. I've looking through the report, I should have declared this at the start, but one of the projects talks about secondary school capacity at Northampton School for Girls. My daughter is a pupil at Northampton School for Girls, so I'd like that on record, please.
Thank you. That's noted, Mike. Thank you. Sally, welcome.
On page 49, it mentions the Northwest Relief Road and the implications. Obviously, we inherited it from NCC. It says that since the shortfall in funding identified was 22 million, bringing the total scheme to 54.5 million. The Cabinet's request in June 21 to a levelling up fund for 20 grand. Was that not, and it wasn't successful, it says? He said, unfortunately, the WNC bid wasn't successful. So in December, the Cabinet approved a change of funding from government grant to discretionary funding. Could you just explain what all that means?
I think it's as per the report. Phil, did you want to comment?
Can I say, Chair, we had reports that came to Cabinet back in December.
Yeah.
where we came to the decision to fund the project ourselves using our own
Yes.
resources.
Yeah. So but you only borrowed 20,000 and we're 22 million. And 22 million was needed and we've borrowed 20 million. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So where's the other 2 million coming from?
That was already allocated, if memory serves me right. That was already allocated.
Okay. And how much will it cost us to raise that 20 million and pay it back?
I'll defer to the finance on that.
It'll very much depend on interest rates at that time, if indeed the money is borrowed.
But it says the cabinet approved you to go and get the loan for 20 million.
It would be from the Public Works Loan Board, if indeed it's borrowed at all. Sally, you may recall at the time there was a debate on how that money would be raised.
Okay, okay. All right. There's the other questions I wanted to ask was on page 53. It says disability facility grants in 2021-22 were 2,843,000, whatever. I never remember all the numbers. And then it drops down to this year to 2,589,981. So that's a reduction. And yet you've got disability grants below that of 1,847,000. And then you've got further down there, disability grants for last year of 407,867. So are they all the same thing or what are they?
My learned colleague on my left is going to answer that one.
Okay.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, there are 3 different lines for disabled facilities grants because essentially the capital programme was put together by picking the capital programmes from the predecessor authorities. And each of those would have had its disabled facilities grant budget in. So we will merge it into one line eventually, but it reflects the fact that we brought it across 3 different capital programmes. And that's the reason we got 3 different lines at the moment.
Okay. So there is a reduction this year in the top one, which is reduced by 300,000, is it?
There is, and that's just based on what would have been the expected level of demand for that year. So for 21-22, the 2.8 is what was expected when that capital programme was put together. Yes, it does go down. Obviously, we need to review that regularly and through monitoring to see if that's at the right level or not.
The reason I'm asking this question is that they are trying to get nursing homes where they don't really want to be, they'd rather be in their own homes. So if they can get their adaptations to their homes done, it means they can stay there longer. So I was a bit sad to see that there was a reduction in that, because I think it's so important that if people want to stay and they can convert their bath into a shower or a wet room, or they can actually just have handles that can help them stand up and various, they can live longer in their own homes. And so I was a bit surprised when there was a reduction in there, because I think it's a false economy.
And through you, Chair, it seeks to reflect demand. So if that demand is incorrect for future years, then we need to amend that, but it does seek to reflect that level of demand.
So if people come along and it goes over that budget, will we not be able to do things for them?
We would need to determine how we manage that. So if there is a pressure in the year and it looked like the demand was greater than the budget that was set, we would need to, the Cabinet would need to determine how they were going to deal with that and manage it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And last speaker, Councillor Harris. Jonathan, welcome back.
Thank you, Chair. Again, hopefully a fairly brief, straightforward and quite specific. This is relating to SIL monies. I have an issue in one of my villages who are trying to seek some SIL claiming. I know the process is ongoing. I've found the right person to speak to finally about it. But it's really to try and get clarification as to when the process will be defined. I'm being told at the moment that there is no defined process for the SIL fund claiming back for parishes, which is a bit disappointing given that we're in February in our first year. So it's really just to raise the issue and to try and identify when we will finally have that process in place.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, there is a process at the moment, as you're aware, because we've had some exchanges about it. So I think you're asking that possibly be formalised, and I think once we've done that, then we can send that around to members so everybody's aware of exactly what that process is.
That would be helpful. It just seems to be a bit of a blockage at the moment in terms of being able to get that through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Yeah. Okay, that's the last of our speakers on item 7. Any other member of the cabinet have any comments or questions at all on this? No? Okay, thank you. In which case, just ask you to confirm your agreement to the recommendations. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 8. So on this one, we have comments back from scrutiny. Speaker will be Councillor Stone to come back and introduce the scrutiny report on the draft budget. Then comments and questions from members to the chair of scrutiny on the comments made. Councillor Stone have an opportunity to engage in a discussion over those and describe some of the findings of the scrutiny. Then we'll come back to Councillor Longley, to Malcolm, if he wants to comment any further on the scrutiny. Then we'll take our speakers, and we've 6 speakers on this. So if we start off just with some initial comments from you, Malcolm, to introduce the report, please.
Very pleased to chair. Thank you. Well, the first thing I'd say is that we're very pleased that we had such an excellent response from opposition members to look at the budget before tonight. I'm not sure quite how many meetings, but quite a lot. And Martin was available on many occasions, and I think that that proved very good. We've tried very hard this year to be open on the subject, and anybody that wanted to know anything, it was available to them, and hopefully the people that attended, Jonathan in particular, Danielle and Emma over there, hopefully they got something out of it. Now, that's on that basis, I'm actually expecting there not to be detailed questions, because but strategic questions, which I would welcome. So the point here, I think, probably worth making it, there's no significant changes from on the final report from the draft. We actually came out of the government grants arrangements better than we thought, and from the draft, which indeed itself showed some improvements, we've actually come up with another 115,000, which is very nice, which we didn't expect. So I think we've done quite well out of that. Now, the additional sort of grant funding we'll be dealing with the pressures that we're having at this stage in a budget. We all know it's all, we're not even in the year yet, and we're trying to tie down this year, and budgets are a dynamic thing. You make a judgment, and hopefully we get it more right than wrong. So the budget remains balanced next year. I think we would be we'd look forward to that happening, because we expected this year to be the difficult year because of lots of unknowns, and there have been quite a few, and that we'd expect those unknowns to be less next year. There will be some, and then the year after that it will be less again, we would hope, if indeed any at all. So with that in mind, we're proposing to leave the provision in next financial year that we had for this financial year, on the same basis and for the same reasons. During 21-22, quite a few surprises arose, and but they've been dealt with. So far, so good, I think is what I usually say, and I think that still remains the case. And I spoke about period 9 earlier on. So we're going into next year in a good position, and unless something dramatic happens, then this budget should happen. Now, there are a few changes to you would like to see, and I'm not going to go through them because they're detailed. Anybody's got any questions on them, put it to us. We'll deal with it afterwards. But you need to look at Appendix G for that, and that's very detailed indeed. I think we've got we look at Appendix C. Appendix C for the changes, and Appendix G is something that I'm hoping you'll all read over the weekend, and that's the flexible use of capital receipts. So that'll all cheer you all up, I'm sure. And right, well, going through, there's quite a number of items here, and I'm really putting a situation here where I think that because of the detail in here, I could talk all night about it. And I've seen people drone on and on before. I don't intend to do that. If there's any specific detail questions, please come and ask us. If you've got a strategic approach, I know there's one or two you will have, and we'll be very pleased to answer that on this evening. So Chair, I'm going to leave it at that and let Danielle speak on her part now for the moment. I'll come back on that thing. Thank you.
Jolly good. Welcome, Danielle. We've got you down as a speaker in your own right as a councillor, if you like. So we've got you down twice. So the first one, the scrutiny. You have got the further chance shortly, if you like. Okay, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. This is our first scrutiny report to Cabinet, and I'm really pleased to be able to present it. This scrutiny committee, like all of them, has worked really, really hard. It's a very complex budget, so we were quite tasked with how we're going to hone things down to actually choose which bits to scrutinise. I think the decisions made by that group of cross-party members have been made very wisely, and we've really enjoyed getting to grips with the detail of what we scrutinised. So we've had 3 meetings. We had one meeting to discuss the global picture. We had one meeting where we broke into task groups, and we had a further meeting, which was to summarise what we were finding and to make our recommendations. So the task groups, it was quite innovative practice, I think, really. We Zoomed and we started off all together, and then we went into separate task groups with the directors coming in to make presentations to each group, and we had a lead within each group who reported back to the general meeting. It worked extremely well. Thank you to Democrat, because everything worked really, really well, but it was also very, very dependent, it seems to me, on the quality of the presentations that we received. So I'd like to thank all the officers involved in putting those presentations together as well. It served its purpose very, very well. So we've ended up with a number of recommendations. One of the things that we know that we've got to do in the coming year is to look much more closely at how the budget aligns with the corporate plan. And we're really, really interested to do that. And we will begin that work around October time. We didn't have time to do that this year. So one of the task groups looked at one particular area within the budget and looked to see how that aligned with the corporate plan. So the recommendation here is based on that. What that group found was that there wasn't a good enough alignment on the climate emergency, which is obviously a key part of the corporate plan, and the way the budget is aligned with that ambition to become carbon neutral in 2030. So the recommendation is that more work is done to make sure there is better alignment of the budget with that part of the corporate plan. It's saying that we need a costed plan that sets out very clearly the actions that we're going to be taking. That group, that task and finish group, also recommended that we have a dedicated officer that will drive this work through the council and with all our partners outside of the council. Now, I understand that in the budget, there is £100,000 allocated for sustainability in the Police Directorate. It doesn't specify what that means, but I've asked what that means, and I'm told that that is 2 posts to support the climate emergency actions that need to be pushed through. That isn't the understanding, I have to say, of the lead member on the climate emergency committee. So we just need to make sure, if that is true, then we'll be very pleased. but we just need it to be confirmed. But that is the recommendations coming out of that task group. With the Children's Trust, we all know there's a lot of anxiety about what's going on with that. And the Task and Finish group that received that presentation from the director of the Children's Trust were really pleased with what they heard and thought that he gave evidence of that being quite a robust budget. The concern there is that they've got a huge improvement journey. And the question was, what does good look like? And how do we know how much good costs? And so the recommendation there is that the Children's Service, the Children's Trust need to provide a zero-based budget so that they can evidence their understanding of the improvement journey and how much it's going to cost. And we were assured that in terms of their reconfiguration of staffing and including all the support mechanisms they're putting in for staff, that piece of work is being done in terms of staffing. But the Task and Finish group would like to see that done across the whole of the service area. It was also the consideration of that Task and Finish group that there needed to be more consideration given by the council to funding all the community-based services that the children's services need in order to support their work. An understanding was reached that they can't do that job on their own, that they need a community around them to support their work, and that as the council, we need to be giving more strength to that. So that was another recommendation, that we need to look for further funding for community-based investment. The third Task and Finish group was looking at just one aspect of adult social care, and it was strength-based working. We were delighted to hear about the impact of that approach and the huge amounts of savings that have already been made using that approach. We were also pleased with the openness and transparency of the presentation in terms of what needed to be done and what things were not going so well. So we know that there's a national crisis, and we have our own crisis in West Northants in terms of adult social care. We heard from our public speaker earlier on about how that impacts on individuals and on family budgets and so on. And so we were very, very concerned about that. We received information that nationally, the recommendation for adult social care workers, that is a figure which is completely out of our reach at the moment, but the consideration of the Task and Finish group is that we should be making very serious moves towards that, and that should be part of our thinking going forward, how we're going to reach that. And I think it's really serious because of the crisis that we're in. We also heard in that presentation that we have 76 providers providing home care. And some of them are very small providers, and one of the biggest providers only covers 6% of the tasks of the job. Those providers charge us £26 an hour. So I think the ask, which is the recommendation here, that we pay all our staff at the council, the Living Wage Foundation Living Wage, which is £9.90 an hour. So it's an uplift of £40 an hour. That is a very strong unanimous recommendation from the whole of the committee, this scrutiny committee. But we also want to recommend to Cabinet that we apply that same uplift to adult social care workers. And see that as part of the journey that we have to embark on to reach that figure of £11.09 an hour. And we have to do that to ensure sustainability of the service and the quality of the service. We cannot go on losing people to the service because they cannot afford to do that job. So those are the recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. That's tremendously helpful. and very clearly understood. And I know that those recommendations are already working their way through the system, being considered. Presumably at some point there's either minutes of your meetings, or is there a sort of report summarising those comments that, you, okay, great. Yeah, that's tremendous. Does anybody want to comment on any of those? You're going to jump in first, Malcolm, with some comments on
I
this?
will if I can, and then I'll call on Mike in
Yeah.
in a moment. Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Danielle. That's very succinct report and easy to read, which is nice for a start. We've obviously gone through this and some thoughts. So I'll deal with the carbon neutrality and highways first. Your first recommendation was the detail required in the council's policy. We absolutely agree with that, and that's haven't got a policy. You're not going very far out, and so then you move on to say that should be costed. Now, absolutely, because I mean, we this could be a crazy number, couldn't it? It could be anything. We don't know, so we've got to at least face the devil and see where we go from there. So we're completely with you there. You were quite right about the two people. I'll read the answer to the employment of two people. I'll read it verbatim. So, within the final budget report for 2023, there is a revenue budget proposal of 100,000 to drive forward the sustainability agenda. So it's in the budget, and that's the starting point. The new investment is intended to employ 2 dedicated new staff to complement the existing staffing resource, which is in the process of being reconfigured. The additional resource is an injection into the base budget, which therefore means the appointments do not have to be time limited. So, Cabinet therefore feels that this particular request from scrutiny is already accommodated within the final budget proposal, is one of the areas of investment that's been specifically invested in as part of this budget process. So you're on a winner on that one. Ticking the box for that one. And then you then go on to ask about investment. We note that and appreciate the support from scrutiny. So that's just a nicety, really. You got what's important. Okay. Children's Trust, the answers there. Cabinet welcomes the view from scrutiny that Children's Trust budget appears to be robust and achievable as best we can judge it. And we've put people in to make sure that was the case. And I think so far so good. And that's out there. It changes, I'll let you know. And then you then go on to say there's more need for community-based investment, funding for community-based investment. Right, okay. Well, the Cabinet will welcome more information from the committee on the type of community investment. So you give us some facts and we can look at it. You then go on to strength-based working and investments you made from the outset to maximize long-term saving. Note the view on this point indeed. The grant funding must be used more effectively and efficiency saving highlight. Note the viewers again, receive further information, and we're pleased to take that on its merits. We then go on to talk in terms of the Living Wage Foundation, and this isn't really within my remit. I can tell you what's happening, but I'll turn to Mike there, if I may, who will give you the detail. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Malcolm. When we look back to the pay settlement from local government, we set ourselves ahead of the curve. And I think it was important as a new authority that we kept ahead of the curve where it's affordable. That's always the key, isn't it? Where it's affordable. So we saw your recommendation and what the Living Wage Foundation recommends of £9.90. And we've gone away and we've looked at whether that's affordable. And actually, when we've looked at it, what we've discovered, partly because of what Malcolm mentioned in terms of having a slightly more from the government than we thought, is that actually we could reach £10 an hour. So tonight, we won't be accepting your £9.90 because we'll be recommending that actually we set it to £10 an hour. Because I think it sets out a real message to people out there that that we are really, really serious about our staff. And when it's affordable, we will go that far. So on the Real Living Wage Foundation, we'll be ahead of the curve on that too. And I know that will please lots of people out there. We're pleased tonight to get ahead of the curve. In terms of the adult social care piece, I don't know if Matt wants to comment on that, but in terms of the employed people, we'll be recommending £10 an hour.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, Matt, did you want to make a brief comment on that?
Yeah, Daniel referenced the home care letter that I think you received, Stuart, didn't you? And you shared that, and that was what you referenced at scrutiny, and I've shared that with Cabinet. Some real interesting data on there, and frankly, the point was made right at the beginning of the meeting by the young lady that we've got to value carers much better and pay them better in our society. And COVID has exacerbated all the issues, and pay, is the main point. So I hope there is an opportunity. Mike's made a substantial announcement there, I think, that goes some way to address that. But I know the home care contract is set to be re-procured and reset for March 2023. So hopefully there's an opportunity for us to address some of the sort of underlying issues that that pay and the rate of pay goes with there. So hopefully we can continue to make some progress on top of what Mike's already announced this evening. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Matt, I beg your pardon. Anybody, any other comments, observations on anything that Daniel has raised on behalf of the committee? Yep, you could come in again, Malcolm.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, there were, just to finish off there, because there was another question. It's a note for the Cabinet that the estimate cost of this is 100,000. And the final settlement of the 115 I spoke about previously, we thought that was the best use we could make of it. So that's where it's come from. So it's well funded. And then you go on to commend consideration as CAF said, be similar to the Cabinet. We've noticed that situation, and you'll know now from our actions that we take these things seriously. I think you've done rather well tonight, haven't you? The other thing, Chair, I'd say, could we please have this as on the recommendations when we could we add it to the recommendations, not currently on there? Yeah. Okay. That's all I've got to report on that.
Thank you very much. Jolly good. Thank you, Danielle.
Can I just come back?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I really, really welcome that announcement. Thank you so much. I think that's really good. And I hope we get a lot of positive publicity around that, because it will show people wanting to come into the local authority to work that we take their welfare really seriously. I do think we need to extend that largesse to all adult social care workers, but maybe, we can be looking at that as we go along. In terms of community support for community-based organisations, Councillor Longley, that came out of a discussion that has been going on all the time, but it originated with a briefing, cross-party briefing that was given by child protection social workers a few years ago, where they were telling us about their caseloads, and they were saying there isn't anything we can do to stop these families going into crisis because we have nowhere to signpost them to when they're getting into trouble, because all those neighbourhood services have gone. Sure Start's an obvious example of that, but it's not the only example. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about community-based support for children's services. Statutory services cannot do the job on its own. They need stuff going on in our communities to be the ones that raise the first alarm, that provide the first levels of support, so that we only have to intervene in a crisis in fewer and fewer cases. At the moment, we've got 1,117 children in care. We need to have a view that we can bring that down. We need to be able to halve that number. We won't be able to do that if we don't strengthen what goes on in the communities. That's what that's about.
I think it's an excellent point. I completely signed up to that. Daniel, just before you go, actually, you are down as our first speaker. Have you covered everything you want to, or do you, in a sort of a individual councillor capacity, have other points you wanted to make?
I've left all the comments I would want to make to my colleague,
Great.
if that's okay. If I just make one observation on the overall budget, I want to say a big thank you to all the officers and to Malcolm for producing a budget, but not just that, but for producing the reporting, because the reporting is really clear and it's really informative, and I think that's really important. And I think the kinds of relationships that we're establishing where people can ask questions and do get answers is really valuable, and I really, really welcome that. What I've said about the budget before, and I think it is still true, is that it's fragile. And I don't think that's to do with the quality of the work that's gone on or the quality of the thinking that's gone on in West Northants. I think there are national issues to do with services like children's and adult social care, and a lot more thought needs to be put into what should happen there by government. More money is needed, and nationally, people are saying to us, aren't they, that adult social care needs another £8 billion, that children's need another £6 billion. We are coping as best we can in a very, very difficult situation. And I think we need to be clear and open and honest about that. I think the anti-poverty strategy that's being developed is going to be really important in helping us prioritise within the budget so that we minimise the damage that's being done in the communities. Okay.
Thank you. That's perfect. I think we agree with what you're saying there. Okay, so on to further speakers to speak on this item. Our next speaker is Councillor Purser, and then the firing order is after Councillor Purser with Councillor McCord, Councillor Beardsworth, Councillor Harris, and Councillor Meredith. So Bob, over to you. Welcome.
Chair, can I thank Malcolm for a very clear report. I was in danger of, need my right glasses. I was in danger of understanding it. The adult care is obviously one of the most difficult areas of the budget process. There's reference to transformation there. There are two sorts of transformation, it seems. There's the ICANN process, and then there's the internal processes of transformation. Just wanted to be clear that is all tough. The second point on adult care is about income generation and about and looking at the outturns from last year in the previous report. That seems to be a very difficult area to achieve. In fact, in adult care, savings seem difficult to achieve and income generation seems to be difficult to achieve. So I think we need to be very cautious that we're not over expecting and over anticipating what can be done in that area, because it seems to me those are difficult areas. The Hardship Fund seems very important at this time because we've got inflation, we've got these huge increases in people's fuel budgets. I'm not convinced it actually properly is the job of the local authority to do this. I'd have thought this is probably ought to be part of central benefits, but I think we have to deal with what we have, and we need to make sure that is effectively delivered and actually gets to people, and we probably need to be monitoring that very carefully, perhaps through scrutiny in the coming year. My final point is about business rates. It's not something I understand fully, but it seems to me that's an area of real risk for us. And I wonder whether we've got to do some thinking and make representations to central government, because it seems to me that we're damaging our town centre and not getting sufficient benefit from these big boxes that we're building. So we've got the balance wrong somewhere. I don't think it's our responsibility, but I think we need, I wonder, it's a question I'm asking, is it something that we're concerned about? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Malcolm, did you want to chip in? We might go to Stuart and Matt also on some of the adult stuff there. Malcolm?
Yeah, fine, thanks. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the comment on the clarity report. I'm blessed with the most excellent team. I've got to say, so the credit should go to them. They're very fit. And the income rate, I'm going to come back to Matt and Stuart in a moment. But the income generation is an interesting one. That is a financial argument because there is a lot of income from adult care, and quite a lot of it doesn't get paid as well, I might have said. So the big issue there is not necessarily that. The big issue there is making sure there's adequate provision in the bad debt arena. And we had a very bad experience of that in NCC some 4 years ago, and we still bear the scars of that on this. So we're very careful about that now, I can assure you. With business rates, yes, there is a risk if it's rebased. The government rebase it, then we could miss out on that. And but if things stay as they are, then businesses in West Northamptonshire are on the up. So you take a view. You take a view. If I could turn to Matt and Stuart on the 2 adult care ones, far more qualified than I'll ever be to answer.
I'll have a go. Yeah. So the income generation is the client contributions, and some of the issues have been because of COVID and the ability to recover some of the costs. But there's a total commitment to make sure that that's done as effective as possible. As far as ICANN and transformation, they are 2 different things. And one, yeah, we've had the conversations and presentations at scrutiny, but yeah, they are 2 totally separate things. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Just one last thing. Lizzie, I think Bob was going to come in on something you mentioned, I think. Yeah, Lizzie?
Just to say about the business rates in Northampton Town Centre, as you've seen, it has had a huge impact on shops moving away, out. And yeah, it is a problem. I have spoken to our MPs. I have spoken to Stuart. It is out of our remit. You're quite right. It's all about lobbying. And I know it's been sort of tabled several times to relook at, and then every time it gets pushed back on the back burner. So I think we've got to do something about this, and we need to play our part. So I completely agree with you. Otherwise, it's just going to strangle our town centre, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you, Lizzie, and thank you, Bob. So our next speaker is Councillor McCord. Ian, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And firstly, can I also add my thanks to Martin, and I'm sure Audra and James and the whole finance team, because I'm well aware of the work that goes into putting a budget together. And yeah, Malcolm, we all know that you're the face of the thing, not the workers. The internal factory do all the work. Anyway, Chairman, this council has received almost 5 million more from the draft budget estimated. We're in times of rising prices, rising costs, to the point where the government is giving most people £150 discount on their council tax bill. Rather than assist, these proposals seek to negate a third of the help by trousering the spare cash. In the South North Hants area alone, that's almost 100 of the £150 taken away. From what I can see, there is not a single base budget correction over and above the 10 million in changes that were made in the draft. All these corrections to the current assumptions make the new budget more accurate and less risky than at present. Within the budget report on the reserve section, it is stated that similar unitary authorities have about 30 million of reserve fund balances, but because of the risk to the new organisation still finding its way, the Chief Finance Officer is rightly recommending it higher at 40 million, a second risk mitigation. Next, we are proposing to bank the surplus and carry on double charging residents for the emptying of their green bin waste to have the contingency within the budget to nearly 10 million. Having the budget more accurate, it is a reasonable assumption the likelihood of using the contingency reduces. Finally, there is a dedicated risk reserve with an opening balance of 34 million on the 1st of April. We have mitigated risk 6 times. First, a more accurate budget. Secondly, general fund balances. Thirdly, increase those general fund balances to 40 million. A 4th time contingency within the budget of 5 million. A 5th mitigation of the 34 million general risk reserve, and a 6th time by pocketing the surplus to deal with phantom risks invented just to justify green waste charges. Are you trying to exterminate risk or mitigate it? We can adopt a slightly less risk-averse stance by not damaging the core financial standing of the council by not charging for green waste. The 3 million of revenue is unjustified, and you still have 2 million change, as there's been no mention of the further windfall income from the 2 interest rate rises not reflected in the figures since the draft was published. Many are struggling right now. The government is trying to help, and this cabinet is undermining that effort by double charging for a core council services, raising money it does not need to raise. At the December meeting, I listened to one of your numbers say, as a good Conservative, he did not want to raise a penny more in tax than is necessary. I agree. Sadly, you don't live by those principles because it's not 1 penny more, is it, Adam? It's 300 million pennies more. And I know many of you think the definition of poverty is having to go to the Ritz on the bus, but there are those for whom the £42 actually means a lot. And the consultation shows huge resistance to the proposal, and there's still time to step away from it and bin the bin charges.
Thank you, Ian. There's got a number of points said. Malcolm, do you want to start with any? Was there any responses you want to make at this stage? Or?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. The issue here is one of management, isn't it? It's management style and how to do it. Now, I think I'd cover 2 points here. The first is that I've come from NCC. I've been when it's been at rock bottom, and myself and a number of other people were party to getting to where it ends up, in a good position. And I ain't going back there. And so what you keep putting there today is on that issue is a matter of opinion. It's a matter of management style. And I don't agree with you. So that one. The other point I would make is that you talk about poverty and things like that. I know all about poverty. I spoke about that some months ago. And I think that I would be looking to Danielle tonight to say, we really understand that, and we will act when we can and where we can. And I will never forget the situation I was in many years ago, and I therefore really feel for that situation. So, we don't go to the Ritz on a bus. A joke, I know it was, and all the rest of it, but that's very, very brilliant. On the management side, I disagree with you. On the poverty side, I know, and we will deal with whatever we can, whenever we can. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ian, were you going to make a response?
Well, I was just going to say, we're not
free.
here as members to manage. We're here to govern.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker is Councillor Bidsworth. Sally, over to you, followed by Councillor Harris and then Councillor Meredith.
Right, follow that. Okay, what I was going to say is a couple of questions, really. This scrutiny committee has worked really well, and it's worked really well because we've had a lot of cooperation from the officers. Martin has been especially helpful and understanding, and the democratic support have been brilliant. And I must raise Tracy Tiff's name, who does excellent work for us and organises things, and she shouldn't be forgotten when we're talking about scrutiny. And scrutiny isn't just the opposition, Councillor Malcolm, it's all parties, and we all came to the same conclusion, which was really nice. Everybody felt the same, and I'm very, very thankful that you're going to put the staff's pay up to £10 an hour. And I would like to know, when will that start? Will it be immediate, or will it be April the 1st? Maybe you can answer me that one later. I think by putting money up, you'll encourage more people into the job. And also, you will not have to pay agency staff the ridiculous sums of £26 an hour, which it could almost break out cost neutral. It could. And plus we're going to get people into the job that really want to do the job, and they don't want to go and stack shelves in a supermarket. They want to work with people and the human side of life. And I think this will encourage it. And I'm very glad that we've done this, and we're doing more next year along with the budget, and so fitting it in with the corporate plan. And I think it's been an excellent piece of work, and I think everybody's enjoyed doing it. And the officers that have given their explanations have been very frank and open, and we appreciate that, because it's no good if people aren't going to tell us the truth and what's happening, because we can't make a sound decision the same as you can. So I think I was very pleased with this piece of work. I'm very pleased and break cost neutral. There's a lot to be done in adult care and health, but I know the director has got it all in hand. And from what we were listening from his report, and I feel sure that he will do a good job and deliver efficiencies and also a better service. So just congratulate everybody who took part. It was very, very well done. And I hope that because you've accepted the recommendations, we'll see that scrutiny does actually work along with Cabinet.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. Malcolm, did you want to comment?
Yeah, well, thanks for those comments, Sally. I think it's the answer to that. That's a very good question, Wen. It's a very good question indeed. I didn't know the answer to that. I've spoken to Martin. Of course, the answer is there is a pay negotiation going on as I said, with the unions and what have you. And I can't go ahead and say when it could be because it's lots of other people to agree it rather than myself and Martin and the Cabinet. But I would hope we get in as soon as it possibly could, certainly in the budget. You know, that's what's budgeted for. So
I think, Mike, were you going to comment on that?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my comment was going to be that it's a budget recommendation. So, you know, this is coming in as part of the budget as opposed to something that would come in immediately because this is a budget recommendation.
That's fine, then, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, the provision is there for it, so that's fine. Yeah.
Fiona,
Watch this space on April the 1st.
Absolutely. Fiona, you're going to comment as well, I think?
I was just going to comment on Malcolm and Martin and their team's organisation of the budget. I'm like Malcolm. I've come from a very poor place to get to this stage. And actually, I think we've funded our children's service in the Children's Trust quite well. But I want us to be available should we hit a crisis, that we can help out and do some more funding if needed. We don't know what will happen. We don't know what will happen in the children's service. We don't know what will happen in adult services. We put together a budget we think will be enough, but some crises can come to us and we may need to fund other things. We may need to fund other things in our schools budget. And I'm really pleased that you have made mitigations that mean I can perhaps come to you and ask you for some extra money if I need it.
I think we're all thinking you can try asking, Fiona. Right. Compliments will get you everywhere, Malcolm, won't it? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Our next speaker, Councillor Harris, Jonathan.
Thank you. It's an evening of follow that for sure, isn't it, tonight? One specific comment, and I hope this falls into Councillor Longley's view of strategic rather than specific or detailed. Just to rewind a little bit in the comments I'm going to make. Some of you may remember back in July, the heady days of July, the Liberal Democrats actually had a motion succeed at council. I think it's been a rarity ever since, but on that occasion we did. And that was specifically in regards to ensuring that all of our services and access provision did not discriminate or impact on anybody who did not use the internet. I still have some concerns and issues around this, and it links to the budget in the sense that it's around potentially the communications investment area. There still seems to be some confusion about whether or not we are doing a review or have done a review in this particular area. And that is feedback that I've picked up via officers. But I really just want to echo and make that point that if we are investing in communications, can I please seek some assurance that we are not going to ignore those individuals that do not have access to our services digitally? I was at a parish council meeting very recently, and there was a gentleman there who was very reliant on the bus services and had only just discovered in the nick of time that he was able to make a comment about the bus service improvement plan. And he found out by chance, really, rather than any other means. Now, I know this is a difficult area, but we had our inaugural meeting of the Equalities Board a couple of weeks ago also. And with that in mind, I do just ask for assurance that we continue consistently to make sure that we provide that sort of access to all of our residents and not just those who are digitally orientated. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly, we'd all support that. Sorry, Malcolm, you go ahead first.
Yeah, I'm going to call on Mike on this piece. I'll tell you about financial implications, but the operational side, of course, that is beyond my. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm going to give you my standard response, which I give every time you raise that point, which is investing digitally is absolutely really important because it frees up time for those to talk to those people that aren't on the internet. So the more we're going to talk about digital investment, it's going to be a really good thing because it's going to free up that time. That's the customer services strategy that came to cabinet, I think, a couple of months ago. So it's we're really conscious of it too. And the more we, when you hear us talk about digital investment, don't think that means we're leaving people behind. We're freeing up time for the people that don't talk digitally. And every time you raise it, I'll make that same point.
And if I may just come back on that, I think it isn't specifically the point about digital investment, although that's part of the issue. It is a communications issue, I think, overall. And that isn't just from the area that you would have portfolio responsibility for. That's across all portfolios. Thank you.
One of the things that we've had is the task and finish group on resident comms. I think you might have been involved in that. Kevin Parker fronted it up, Councillor Parker. He and I have had a catch up today, and we know the importance of ensuring that not all of our communication is just email or digital. We need to get printed material out to libraries, parish councils, community rooms, or whatever. I think it's a fair point. And our conscience on this is Councillor Larratt, who continually reminds us at the Cabinet Group that how important that is. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. That takes us to our last speaker on this item, which is Councillor Meredith. Dennis, welcome.
Perhaps it's something to liven people up, I don't know, but I'm always seem to be the last speaker. Right. I've been through these budget papers and I can't see anything in here that is really going to interest me greatly to do with Talavera. I invited 3 senior councillors to come to Talavera to see what the situation was. And I believe I was assured that I was going to get some extra help to level up Talavera. I've also written to Michael Ellis, and he sent me a great deal of what he is doing in the Commons, but still nothing for Talavera. And I've sent him 2 other letters back, and he's told me that he now is concerned about Talavera and that he's going to get in touch with the leader of the council. So I'm hoping that is going to take place, and he is going to tell Jonathan in no uncertain terms that Talavera needs some help. You may have seen the press report in Northampton Journal, really damning report about the poverty which is happening in Talavera, but nothing is being done. There's nothing in here to say any money is coming to Talavera. I have called on you as a cabinet for £1 million to be put into Talavera, which is greatly needed. Even in Talavera, as I speak today, the food banks are not getting the food to be able to feed the people that need the food, because people now can't contribute because they haven't got the money to buy extra groceries to take to the food banks. That's how bad the situation is. And I say to you, why on earth has none of you come back to me since that visit and told me we are going to put extra money into Talavera? No one has approached me. I've asked for this to happen. I have sent messages asking when it's going to come, when this extra money is going to come, because the poverty situation is getting worse. And when I say worse, I'm talking about the homeless in my division. I'm talking about the unemployed. I'm talking about the people who can't get jobs. And it was rightly pointed out by the government's report that Talavera is one of the worst areas in the county, in West Northants. And Jonathan, none of you have come back and said, Councillor Meredith, we're going to put extra money in. There's nothing in this, nothing at all. So I'm not going to support this budget whatsoever because of that thing. I'm there to represent Talavera. And I wanted you as a cabinet to be sympathetic, to say there was money coming to Talavera. I am totally fed up having to talk to the press, having to talk to people. Indeed, I had 2 emails today, people asking me for help. Where are the food banks? And I have to answer that question.
Yep.
And if you don't do anything, I will embarrass this council.
Well,
I
Dennis,
will-
I'm going to stop you there because you're a minute over time. And
Okay,
I
thank
wouldn't
you,
normally do
Jonathan.
that,
I
but
appreciate-
you are repeating all of your points.
Thank
There's
you very
barely a
much.
line in that budget which does not apply to Talavera. We don't mention any other specific wards in very much detail. Talavera does get a lot of support. I know we had that visit. I couldn't make it on the day. I think we have got activities from that, but we will. I think it was, if I remember right, it was Phil, Matt, and David who were able to join you on the day. We will just pull ourselves together and see what we can come back to you specifically on. But I promise you, we're as committed to Talavera as we are anywhere else. I think if we identified the net spend on all of our budget lines would be as strong in Talavera, if not stronger, than it would in most areas. But we will come back on a specific reply. In fact, I think Phil wants to make a comment now. Phil, did you want to chip in on this?
Just to say, Chairman, yes, along with Matt and David, I did go and meet with Councillor Meredith. And from my perspective, we were looking at the Southfields Community Centre, which I've discussed with you, Chair, and with Cabinet colleagues, and we recognise that it is not fit for purpose. Something needs to be done. Officers are currently working on that, and as soon as we've got some definite proposals, we will come back to you, Dennis. It's just these things take time, as you know full well. There are people occupying the area that is already up there. That has got to be resolved. There's problems regarding that. But as soon as we've got something, yes, we will come back to you. I don't think it's gone away, please.
Okay, thank you for that, Phil. That's very useful. But just take it from my point of view. Please, Jonathan, just take it from my point of view. As a councillor of one of the most deprived areas, I get it in the neck every day. And I just need you to do something for me.
Okay, that's understood, Dennis. We hear you. Thank you. Okay, that was the last of our speakers on that item. I don't know if any cabinet members, any other comment they want to make or any question they want to make of Malcolm in his presentation of that report. Are we all done on our points on item 8? I'm going to draw your big old list of recommendations. There are quite a lot here, but in addition to which, Malcolm has just made a comment about reflecting the scrutiny comments in there, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think there might be an issue that we are about to vote agreeing what we have agreed with scrutiny, but then if I'm perhaps asking Malcolm to work with Democratic Services to confirm the exact wording of that in the minutes, is that acceptable? We're all happy with that? That includes the £10. Let's clarify that it does. Yes, it does. Yes. So can we ask you specifically, there'll be a request in there for the 990. Malcolm, reflect the £10 in what we've agreed this evening, if you would. So if you're happy for me to do that, I'm going to draw your attention to the recommendations, including the agreement and our thanks to scrutiny on item 8. Is everybody happy to support that? Can you confirm your agreement, please? That's great. Thank you very much indeed. I am going to suggest we have 4 items left with 3 or 4 speakers against each. If we were going to run for another 15 minutes, I'd say keep going, but I think we've got another half an hour or so to go. Can I suggest a short break of say 10 minutes? Is that okay? Come back here just before 8 if we may and get started again. Yes, I've drunk some water too. Thank you. then, shall we? We've one more paper reference to the finances. This is item 9. This is the housing revenue account final budget. We'll get Malcolm to make an introduction shortly, then with 3 speakers in the order of Councillor Roberts, Councillor Beardsworth, and Councillor Meredith. So, oh, did he? Okay, I'll cross him off the list. Very good. In which case, over to you, Malcolm, to introduce this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For those that have read through this report, and what we have here is really a continuing the current strategy that came from the borough. There's nothing really changed in this. It's just a continuum. The current plan in here, as you probably observe, is to build 200 houses a year, and that's been reflected in this plan. But there is underway a major review of the HRA, and that's primarily because a lot of us are new to this. We're used to the other budgets, but including the finance staff and myself. So we're looking to fully understand the situation, which we're pretty much there now. We've had they've got some very good staff, and what has come out, they're a very competent operation in all sectors, and this budget reflects that. And when we've gone through, we finalised this review in the future, then we'll see where we go from there. But the current plan is really a continuum of the strategy. That's the point. And you have to be aware in here, or we have to be aware that, of course, we've all heard about the rising inflation costs in building, and that's been hopefully taken care of adequately. The borrowing requirements are in here, they're significant, and that's included in this budget. The green agenda costs, I'm looking over here at Jonathan at this stage, are not included in this budget at this stage, and will have to be incorporated sooner or later. So that's a big number. So that has to go in there. And that's part of this review we're having at the moment, the implications of that. And there's also been some slippage which has taken place, but that's reflected in this budget as well. But overall, there's also sort of minimal changes between draft and final budget. And so the budget reflects what I think is a competent crew and a continuum of the current strategy. And so I'll leave it at there, Chair, if that's okay. Thank you.
That's great, Malcolm. Thank you very much. Let's bring our 2 speakers in. First of all, Councillor Roberts. Emma.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't register on the previous item because my colleagues were speaking, but it'd be remiss of me, I think, wouldn't it, if I didn't come here and say what a fabulous announcement a £10 an hour floor is. And I do wonder whether me mentioning that to Sarah and also asking Martin to cost up how much that would be for our amendments to the budget may have had an influence. I don't know. I can only suggest. Back onto the item itself. The housing revenue stuff. I also wonder whether or not that enters into, and this is off the window, whether that has to be factored in to the HRA budget now and how that moves forward, given that I appreciate MPH are an individual employer, but we would of course want to have some alignment, I would have thought, in that any staff pay rise for us would ensure to follow on to them. Now, I don't know without checking whether or not MPH have got that position. I know in the budget, we're accommodating, I think, 2.5% for staffing cost increases. And I think in the HRA budget, we're looking at about 2%. So I had a query about whether we were going to rationalise that at all, because it would seem strange for a council employee to be paid differently to the MPH employees. That's my personal opinion. I just also wondered whether or not we had any reckoning or understanding of the impact that the housing strategy was going to have on this budget moving forward. You may not be able to answer that at the moment. But it seems to me that a review of that size would have a significant impact. Apologies, my throat's incredibly dry for some strange reason. And how will the budgets, the 2 budgets, link in, given that we've made these points? Then the housing strategy will look at council stock plus private sector housing. So how will the HRA budget then link in to the general fund budget, given that, and I'm learning too, so given that we can't move funds around just randomly between the two. So how will that work? Genuine question at 6.12, and I will declare I'm obviously an MPH board member, so there's an interest in this particular item. 6.12 service charges. I don't really know how they work. I don't know if they are being affected in the same way that the rent standards are referenced at 6.10, because they've been increased by 3.1%, but not the 1% above 3.1%. I'm not sure whether we have to increase them in the same way, whether we're able to increase them in the same way, or indeed how that calculates. And it might need another meeting to give me that answer. And the question was, and I think Martin nodded at me anyway, are we budgeting the same staffing costs within the HRA for pay increase for MPH staff as we are in our own budget? And how does that work? And if not, surely we should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emma. I think the £10, we were thinking about it. We know you were thinking about it. We all think it's a good idea. That's probably the answer to that one. Reference MPH and any of these other queries. Malcolm or Martin, is there anything you want to chip in, or we've got others in mind?
Happy to take one. Thanks, Chair. Let's get Emma get a drink first. All right. You okay? Yeah. It takes time, man. Plenty of time. No. Okay, you're okay? You're right, okay, right. Well, talk about the strategy first, because that impacts everything, of course, as you know. And you've got to bear in mind here two factors, I would say. The first is that we have an inherited situation. And that's and when you're in a housing environment, you don't. It's the oil tanker argument, isn't it? It takes a long time to turn anything around. So therefore, there's nothing immediate here. It can't be. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't do it. But you know, you've all got to decide as a council. You know, what do we want to do and what can we afford, and all the questions inevitably come out. And coming into this completely cold, both Martin and myself and the staff, you need to understand it. You can't own what you don't understand, sort of argument. So that's where we are. So don't read too much into it at this stage, because we're just in the process of understanding it. We're sticking with this budget at the moment because that's what's coming. We've got very, very good staff there. I mean, Phil, you know Phil, of course, I'm sure, very competent. So we're not changing anything there. So watch this space is the argument. Okay, that's all I could say on that, really. And there won't be anything immediate, because there can't be, even if we wanted to. Now, as far as the pay is concerned, my understanding is that they're two separate organisations and they make their own decisions on this. So that's my understanding of it. Clearly, anything we do, they've got to pay attention to that. So if you're on the board of that, then that's the place really to make the point, isn't it? I would have thought.
I think that's a place for a conversation, though, Malcolm, because they've budgeted based on a 2% position, which was given to them by the authority, which is now a 2.5% position. And in addition, they wouldn't have been aware until now of that announcement. So that needs to be considered, because obviously the HRA budget is presented to you as part of the management fee paid to MPH.
Sure. Yeah. And this is, as I said earlier on, it doesn't differ greatly from the draft to the final. So this is budgeting, isn't it? Okay, so service charges. Now, in normal environment, then service charges usually based on costs, and usually you analyse this on a yearly. I mean, what are the costs of servicing? In this particular case, my understanding is it's based on CPI, and that's it. So it wouldn't. CPI is, you understand, it's not RPI, it's CPI. I understand the difference. Yeah. So that's relatively modest. Now, whether that's going to change in the next year or two, that's another matter. So I think hopefully that answers your questions. Anything you want to add, Martin?
Just thanks, and through you, Chair. Just on the last point, the service charges aren't subject to the same regime as the rent charges are. So the the rent charges are CPI plus 1%, service charge is just CPI. And then you don't have to.
You're looking a lot better, by the way. So you went a bit red for a moment.
We're glad you're okay. That's the main thing. Any other points on this? Have we covered everything? I think we would encourage, we accept that MPH have put forward a budget. We would probably now, with the decision we've taken, encourage them to follow the same. I think that's something that probably we'll ask Adam, whether Adam already will have on his radar to have discussion, and possibly Martin too, and Stuart, because I know all of us big believers that this is the right thing. So there's a discussion to be had there, accepting the budgets are in place. Any other comments at all on any of the points that Emma has raised? No? Okay. Emma, thank you ever so much. Next then, Councillor Bidsworth. Sally, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. A little bit disappointed with the rent increase at the moment, but there again, everybody's going through it. And it's still a lot better than the private sector, of course. The right to buy seems to be on the increase again. And if we're trying to build 200 houses a year, and last year we lost 83, it's an uphill struggle to keep things going. Personally, I'd like to see the right to buy suspended for a few years so we could catch up on our council housing stock, but it's not possible because it has to come from central government, and it's too much of a Margaret Thatcher award-winning prize that they won't change that, unfortunately. I have tried in lots of times, but it's I'm very pleased that in some respects Northampton Partnership Homes has won an award to actually insulate their properties. So they've got 6.1 million, and so by insulating their properties, even though they pay more rent, their bills might be less. So that might be a help for tenants. And we can hope that they've got, I think they've got about 11,000 properties now. So I don't know how much it will all cost, but it'll go a good way to getting a lot of them insulated. But as I say, I think Northampton Partnership Homes does a good job. And I know Phil, who is excellent accountant and can talk you about, because the HRA is a different animal to anything else in local government. So basically, just a little bit worried about the increase in costs and all the other increasing costs in life for our tenants. And also, we used to have a scheme years ago where people weren't given a lifelong tenure. They were given 5 years, and if their circumstances change, they could probably afford to go to the private sector rather than stay in a council house, because it's actually a starting point for people, council property. We've got 3,000 people on the waiting list. It's an awful lot of people waiting for homes. And so it's something we should be looking at. And it would be really nice if the government would give us a break in the right to buy. But it's worth asking the question when you see Mr. Ellis or Mr. Andrew Lua next time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sally.
Well, I would come back on the right to buy, actually, because you're absolutely correct on that. It's a very contentious point as far as the the operation is concerned. I mean, very briefly, I'll give you orders of magnitude, not exact numbers. Over the last 5 years, there's been something like about 900 new properties, and in the last 5 years, there's been 800 sold on right to buy. Give you some flavour of it. So we're going forward, but very slowly. So it gives you a measure what the impact is.
Can I just come to that, Malcolm? That the trouble is now, sometimes we're buying back council stock, and we're buying it back at premium prices.
We're buying it back at market rate.
Yes, which is premium prices as far as I'm concerned. And you know, it's just so sad when we've got people who desperately need help.
Well, you put all those factors together, and the issues that I spoke about some of the negatives and what have you, and the 3,000 waiting lists, and those are. Is there any wonder we're having a strategy review?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
We need to, and so does the government as well.
Largely, I think in this audience, preaching to the converted, at least we have added the other 900 homes, of course, and the other homes that have been bought are still there to be occupied by residents. But no, does make it feel like fighting a bit of a losing battle, doesn't it? I think Adam was going to comment as well on one last point on this. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, just to encourage everybody to chip in via scrutiny when the housing strategy does come before that body, because factors such as those that Sally's mentioned, Chairman, really do play into an exacerbated need for us to build more social housing, more affordable housing, housing across the spectrum. Really, we need to be looking as well, particularly in rural areas, about starter homes, shared ownership, all those different options that we have before us. And in me, she finds another ally rather in the objectors to right to buy. It's a policy now that isn't coherent in the context of where the housing market is today, in my view, and I'll say that in any forum. So I do think the government should rethink that. The waiting period for eligibility to buy a council property is far too short. It's a severe impediment to the council's long-term strategy in terms of building council houses. When you know that you can lose a significant portion of that stock within 3 years now, then that makes you think twice about your approach and your strategy to enhancing that housing stock. So it's a serious issue, but one that we'll look for every avenue to mitigate.
We did look into one time a housing company, and there is a mechanism, I think, when you go into a housing company that you don't have the right to buy.
It's all
It
under
might be
review.
something to look at in the strategy.
We have had discussions today on that even, haven't we? Adam, sorry.
Important to note that it is lawful to set up a housing company and for that to inadvertently or indirectly circumvent the right to buy. It is not lawful to set up a housing company for that express purpose. So just need to be careful.
Lots of reasons, lots of reasons.
Yeah, be careful here, sorry.
Jolly good. Okay, well, I think then on that item, that's the last of our speakers. Do any cabinet members have any other comments or questions on the HRA? No, in which case, the recommendations are on page 257. Just asked to confirm your agreement, please. Is that agreed? That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, takes us on to a different subject. Next report is with Fiona. This is about admission arrangements for local authority maintained schools. We had one speaker, which was Councillor Lister. Unfortunately, a family emergency can't be with us. You may have an idea of what he wanted to raise. Fiona, it's over to you to introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is quite a momentous moment. So just to say that this is the first time that we're putting forward the admission process for West Northants Council. As last year when we did it, obviously, for the children coming in next September, we did it for the whole county. So this is the first for West Northants Council. So this paper covers the admission arrangements for all secondary and primary schools in West Northamptonshire for September 2023. As I've said, this is the first occasion where we're splitting the Northamptonshire admissions into two councils. In order to adhere to the laws for the school admission guidance, this has to be agreed every year, whether we change it or not. This report provides the information to allow the council to determine the admission arrangements for all schools in our district for the 2023 intake. You will note in the paper numbers, this is because we do know that there will be less children applying to go to those schools, and it is beneficial to the school to know in advance what their pupil admission number will be, which we call PAN, so that they're able to budget in advance. Also gives those schools, as I've just said, lots of planning time for their budgets. And just to assure everybody that a full consultation has taken place and all has been agreed by the schools in our area. There's a detailed plan in the report on the application for timings, closing dates. The closing date we've extended from 5 o'clock until midnight. And it may seem a bit odd that we do that when we give them quite a long time to apply, but we do know that everybody seems to leave it till the last minute and apparently got upset with us because they wanted to apply the night of the closing and discovered it closed at 5 o'clock. So we now do it at midnight instead. And this will assist those people who go to work. You will see in the papers that we've given funding out to some schools where we anticipate a bulge in the year 7 and arrangements where we've got more children coming into secondary school in those areas. And we have funded them in order to take more children in those schools which we've nominated. Just to answer Councillor Lister's question that he was going to put forward, that was about how much capacity we've got, and the new school which we've just got through the planning permission, or partly through planning last week at the strategic planning meeting for Western Farm, will actually be going ahead, and that will ease the numbers considerably. We definitely need that school to be in place by September 2023, and then we will be relaxed the following year. We think we're just waiting for the census to come out to see what we need for the following year. But for 2022-23, we will have plenty of capacity for our children. So I would recommend that the Cabinet approve the arrangements in Appendix A, agree the coordinated schemes in Appendix B and C, and agree the relevant area for West Northamptonshire schools. Thank you.
Totally good. Thank you, Fiona. That's terrific. As always, of course, we have as a Cabinet had discussion on all these papers as they come through the process, but I'll just pause to see if any Cabinet member has any other comments or questions that they want to make. No? No, in which case, just ask you to confirm your agreement, please, to the recommendation as Fiona's just described them. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fiona, thank you very much indeed. Takes us on to item 11. This is the Abingdon Street Public Realms work and basically the approval of dispersing money the government have given us for this purpose only. I think it's about the shape of that, isn't it, Lizzie? We do have 4 speakers, councillors Roberts, Purser, Stone and Beardsworth. Over to you, Lizzie.
Thank you. Yes, so this is the Abingdon Street Public Realm Cabinet paper. And just for those of you that are not aware, it also includes Fish Street as well, which is a small side street opposite the Grosvenor Centre. So that includes in this Cabinet paper. So this is basically a good news story. Each month we have a mammoth exercise of work to meet all the different milestones until it's ready for sign off by the Northampton Forward Board. And basically this aligns into the town centre master plan, and you know, it's a no-brainer really. It's all about revitalising Northampton town centre, which we all are aware is in desperate need of being revitalised. I'm not actually intending to go through, I think I've got the same problem as you actually. I'm not intending to go through all of the papers because it's actually totaling about 165 pages. So what I'm going to do is just draw out a few bits and pieces, and then obviously we've got quite a number of speakers and I'm sure they will be answered as well. So basically what we're asking is to seek to delegate the authority to Stuart Timmis, who is obviously head of this area, in consultation with the Cabinet lead, myself, to allow the drawdown of the 4,610,000 and a bit, and to appoint a principal contractor. And that will involve a competitive tendering process, as you would expect, following a framework. The point I wanted to raise here is that we will be looking favourably on contractors with green credentials, and that's from the sourcing, etc. As part of the conditions of this drawdown of the funds, we have to do the project within a certain time period, and that is by 2025. I actually welcome this sort of target because it means we really have to get ourselves into gear, and these things have a tendency to drift on if you do not have a timeline. If you want to know more details about the actual breakdown of that timeline, if you go to page 334 and 349, you'll get much more of a detail about the different milestones. The money, as I said, comes from the Towns Fund, and we awarded in total 24.9 million to be split amongst a number of projects. And what you've probably experienced by now is each month, a project or two comes forward. And in order to get that money, we had to go through a town's investment plan. So just as a quick reminder, any project using the town's investment plan monies, the sovereign decision maker is not Cabinet, but the Northampton Forward Board. So it's slightly a different structure to many of the other Cabinet making decisions that we have here. But Cabinet is an extra layer that we have decided to put into this process. And it's a method of us implementing the Northampton Forward Board's decision. So it's that extra stage of robustness. But on top of that, each project that I'm bringing forward takes about a month of bringing together all of that decision making via a number of processes. So we've had Cushman and Wakefield, a well-renowned strategic organisation that have been there from the outset. We then have Hatch that independently appraise the business case for each project on a series of criteria, including the economic criteria. That's important to mention here. And then page 383, it identifies how we are basing the BCR value on this of high value for money. So that's really good value for money in terms of investment. If you want to go into detail about how this will affect the football, the improvements that we're about to make, if you go to page 331, that will show you the impact on the footfall of doing this, or not doing it, or doing it in a different way. So that will give you the footfall in terms of extra visitors to Northampton Town. So on page 379, hopefully I'm not going too quick here, but details of the full project assessment is detailed by Hatch. And for each project, we go through with Hatch at an oversight and delivery stage prior to presenting to the Northampton Forward Board. So basically, we have Hatch who sit on that meeting and we scrutinise that business plan. And if there is any area that I could recommend that you look into in detail, it is at that Hatch report, because that's like the justification of why we're doing what we're doing. There is a lot of paperwork here, but please do refer to the Hatch reports. Gillespie's are the architects, and they've also designed a number and are designing a number of our projects, including the Market Square. And again, in the pack, you'll see a full design spec here, which hasn't finished yet, all designed to REBA Stage 3, which is a specific planning and design phase, well recognised within the industry. In terms of oversight and development board, the delivery board, we have a mix-up of surveyors, SEMLEP, the university, Cabinet, who all sit on that pre-board before it goes to the Northampton Forward Board, where we scrutinise with Hatch the detailed plans and the cost-benefit assessment. In addition to that, we have, in terms of consultation and communication, a series of subgroups. They're in different stages of formation. Probably the most well-established of those, I would suggest, is the political party subgroup. And that meets monthly to go through the plan of that particular project for that month. We also have a heritage subgroup, which is being formulated, a community subgroup, and now a new one called the Cultural Compact, because culture and the arts is going to be absolutely critical to our town centre regeneration. Northampton Forward Board is made up of all of the people I've just mentioned, plus we have representation from our MPs, and Andrew Lure is a frequent attendee at that meeting. And in addition to that, we have Joe Gordon from the theatre as well. In terms of the designs and how we've come to the recommendations for the designs, there are a series of options. And again, they're in the pack, page 333, for those of you that are interested. And what we've chosen is a sort of a blended option of all four of the shortlisted designs. Also in the pack, on page 332, it details everything that we're trying to encompass into this new design protocol. And that's anything from better signage to the foliage, to the trees and planting and landscaping, to the types of surfacing that we'll be utilising, to the pop-up market stalls, and to the service points for the entertainers that we hope to attract to the area. I have to mention inflationary pressures because of the rising cost of build and raw materials. And we have a significant contingency and optimum bias in our plan, much more than you normally would, which is a total of 30%. And if you want to look at the breakdown of how we've done that, that's on page 335, section 7.4. The design guidelines are being drawn up for developments in the town centre going forward to maintain consistency. So the design guide is there to say that everything must flow through the town. So from the market square, which will be, you know, a £10 million project, all of those raw materials will then flow through the rest of our plan. So you've got that consistency, the same pallets, etc., which will give a more coordinated approach than perhaps what we see at the moment. In terms of maintenance budgets from managing these open spaces and all the surfacing, that will be incorporated into our existing public open space budget. So then we come on to, you know, concerns about how we're going to deliver all of this. Every month I bring forward another project. What I would say is we do actually have a track record already, and through that track record, we have developed a good level of competency. We've learned from our mistakes. You know, Delapre Abbey had its ups and its downs, and in terms of timelines was extended somewhat. But from that, we now have a wonderful historic house, which is managed expertly by Richard Clinton, and is a template now for how we will be managing all of these projects within the town centre. We also have the museum. We also have the Vulcan Works with the 55,000 square feet of office space. I have also had pointed out to me on a number of occasions, and is absolutely critical to the success of this project, and that is all about how are we going to resources, how are we going to manage each of these projects. People say to me, there's so much going on, how are you going to do it all? You know, who's doing what? Do you have enough staff in place? It is a really, really important question and mustn't be underestimated. And so what I've asked for, and hopefully in the next month or so, we will get a project plan of each project, even those that haven't come to fruition yet, who is going to be managing at each stage, and that includes who are the key personnel, even within Cushman and Wakefield, even within Hatch, even with Gillespie's, and then our own team, so that we can see that consistency and we can make sure that we've got the right people on board for each project. As I said, this is quite a complicated way of managing a development opportunity, but because we have so many, it's important that we get it right and we take the time to consult with all the parties. And each month you'll see me bring a new cabinet paper with an additional project to bring to the fore. Next month, we will be moving up alongside the public realm to discuss M&S and BHS, those redundant sites, and how we're going to bring those to fruition in terms of accommodation, in terms of shopping and leisure and retail opportunities. So we are already working on the business cases and the strategies to bring forward to the next cabinet meeting those buildings. So it takes a whole month to have pulled together all the reports to then bring to you after the Oversight and Development Board have actually agreed the process and the protocol going forward. So I think that's everything. I'm sure there'll be more questions and look forward to answering them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. It's very helpful. Let's bring in our four speakers. So first of all is Councillor Roberts. Emma.
Chair, with your indulgence, I'll only speak if my colleagues don't cover everything we've discussed, but I'm pretty sure they will. They're more than capable of doing so.
Okay, thank you. In which case, let's jump to Bob. Councillor Purser, please.
Thank you, Chair. My thought is that the consultants have got it about right, but actually the last Abington Street scheme was really a missed opportunity, and really this is a bit of catch up, and now we face really some serious problems in terms of footfall. Figures are frightening, actually, as are the numbers of vacant shops. So my concern is we have to get people into the town centre. We need, the key thing is the vision. How do we have the vision for our town centre? How are we developing that? How are we sharing that? How are we making sure that everyone in Northampton and around owns that, so that we all want to go into the town centre every week? That's the challenge we've got. And my concern with this scheme is that I'm probably the only person who's interested in granite sets and what they look like and the minerals in them, because I'm fascinated by it. And I can give you a tour along the streets showing you interesting dikes that we've got. But I'm the only person, nobody else is going to be interested in that. People have got to have a vision for what's their role in the town centre. Is it shopping? How are we going to get people out of the boxes and into the town, offline and into the town? How are we really going to celebrate our cultural, historic, cultural heritage so that we can share that? And now we've got some good building blocks. We've got Diwali, we've got Remembrance, where people do come in. We've got to build on that. And my concern is that we too early get into the architects and the stonemasons and haven't really yet done the partnership building between the town council and the various heritage groups and all the people who need to be buying into the vision. And what I would hope is that we can really use this as an opportunity to build those partnerships. How are we building the partnerships? How are we building the vision? Because something radical has to happen to our town centre for it to have a future. Now, I won't waste time going through why it's gone wrong, but we've got to find a way to make it go right. That's my question, really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, so there's sort of questions and statements there, but like you say, there's no point in looking back. We are where we are, and there's only one way up as far as I'm concerned. Right, so as far as the likes of the town council, the heritage groups, the community, that maybe you missed that point, but that is why we have the subgroups to the Northampton Forward Board. Okay, so for example, the political subgroup has the town council on that political subgroup, as well as the opposition groups within WNC. Sadly, attendance has not been great, but I am encouraging everybody that are on those subgroups to attend, okay? And picking up with Kevin and the team when people aren't attending so that we can chase. You know, for example, Sally, she had a telephone call, she couldn't get in. You know, it's that sort of thing. So we really work hard on that, okay? In terms of the rest of it, so it's not just about the subgroups, is it? It's about the rest of the town. It's about outside the town. And this is going to be a hell of a marketing exercise, isn't it? To get everybody engaged in this. And we are only at the start of the marketing. I'm meeting with Craig and Gillian. We're gonna start the marketing strategy. We do have Pavement Creative working on the marketing strategy, which will be launched soon. Our vision is that we have a site in Northampton town, an exhibition which is always going to be there, morning, noon and night, so people can go and visit and see the plans and see the progress. So you'll have like charts of where we're at, where we're going, what we need to do, so everybody can keep up to date with that. But the whole premise of this works around marketing, and I don't think we've done enough on that, and we're aware of that, okay? And I am pushing on the marketing side as well. In terms of vacant shops, yeah, absolutely. But as I say, there's only one way, isn't there? We've got to make this a success. And in terms of how this is going to happen, apart from the marketing, we've got one opportunity to me, in terms of this opportunity is with the Market Square. We have to make that a wow. We have to really turn that around. And when it's reported, people go, yeah, we want to go and see that. You know, I've been visiting with the team other towns in the UK. And when I've gone, I've been really surprised by some of the places I visited and thought, gosh, I didn't know that was there. You know, we really need to get out there and we really need to shout about it. But in order to do that, we need to get it right. So there's a lot of pressure, isn't there, for everybody to get this right. And it starts with the Market Square, and then the public realm will follow and all the rest of it as well. So our projects at the moment, this 34 million is a catalyst to what will then carry on. This isn't just a 1 or 2 year project. This is going to take 10, 15 years to really turn it around. But I think we can do it. We just need to be creative on our funding as well. We really do need to attract investors. And we are talking all the time to investors, and we're bulking the team up. So we've got that strategic support to go out and talk to investors and encourage them to come and say we're open for business.
Jolly good. Thank you, Lizzie. Our next speaker, Councillor Stone. Danielle, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to be able to match that optimism and energy, am I? But I am one of the ward councillors for this area. So of course, I'm absolutely delighted with the investment, and I'm absolutely delighted people have gone for the blended offer. I think that's exactly what is needed and what I would have done. I'm sorry I haven't been involved in any of those consultations and discussions, though. I do want to say one thing about what has happened in the past. You know, we spent £3 million on Abington Street before, with a £3 million penalty in terms of the cost of repayment of the loan, to de-pedestrianise. And I am a bit sad that you haven't taken the opportunity with this plan to re-pedestrianise Abington Street, because clearly that wasn't a good project and it didn't ever work in terms of increasing footfall. So I think there was a missed opportunity there to further, further our green agenda in terms of re-pedestrianising Abington Street. The thing that I'm bothered about is something that I keep raising. So if I say to you, Market Square, student flats, studio apartments, 1-bedroom flats, drapery, 1-bedroom flats, studio flats, St Giles, 1-bedroom flats, studio flats, Abington Street the same, Gold Street the same. What impact do you think that is going to have on the feel of the area, the culture of the area, the attractiveness of the area to people coming in? What are we doing? It seems to me that we've got a push me, pull you factor going on here. And I really do want people to start taking that seriously. And the other thing I want to say is the design of what is going to go into Abington Street seems to me to be an extremely family-friendly thing. And I really, really welcome that. About time. Family-friendly working is what we should be looking at. Family-friendly nighttime economy. How about that? Because the interesting thing for me is about how are all those people who are going to be living in the town, are they going to be transitory or are they going to be invested in it? That is the issue, isn't it? If they're invested in it, and we had a much greater mix of housing, and we had families living there, and we had workers who work in the town living there, that gives us a completely different feel to the town, doesn't it? And I think we need to be thinking much more about things like that. If Newcastle, of all places, can have a family-friendly nighttime economy, then I think surely we can. Because if we have people living in the middle of town, and we have the scenes there that I see on Friday nights when I'm taking our youth home from our youth club along the Wellingborough Road, I wouldn't let our youth out there at 9 o'clock at night. It's horrible. Drunks rolling about all over the street. We don't want that in a family-friendly space, do we? So that is my question. This is gorgeous, and thank you for all the work and your enthusiasm, and I can see, you're going to be right on task and get it done. But we've got to pay attention to get it done for who, and who is going to be living there. There's lots of people already living in the town who own businesses in the town. I would have thought they are the key, core residents that are going to help make this a really wonderful place to be. But we can't do one thing and not attend to everything else.
Okay, well,
Okay.
thank you. I am internally optimistic, and I think in this job I have to be.
Mm.
Family friendly. Well, yes, that is the whole point of this. It is family friendly. No, because what you're saying is that it's going to be rented accommodation, student accommodation along Abington Street. Well, I'm not sure where you got that from, but it's not. Okay, so it's going to be the private rented market. It is going to be families. It is going to be business people. And the whole point of this is to try and raise the demographics. We are advised by some of the best experts in the country. I can't tell you how many experts we've got on this. Okay, so we have to trust their judgment. They've done it elsewhere in the UK. And in fact, I've got one of our Deputy Lord Lieutenants who is giving his time. He has done this throughout the UK, who I value his input alongside the Cushmans and Wakefields, alongside the Hatches, alongside our significant experience in WNC. I mean, Stuart Timmis has done this elsewhere and won awards for it. So I trust and I believe in what we're doing, and we will change it. It will take time, but with that change, with that, the designs that you're seeing here today, it'll be a journey and we will change it. We have to, because we've only got, this is our last opportunity to change it. So I am optimistic and I believe in what I'm doing, and I will continue to believe in what I'm doing, and I have to have confidence in that. And I hope everybody else has confidence in it.
Yeah, thank you.
Say, Chair, that I have endless confidence in Councillor Bowen, and I want to make that absolutely clear. I think she's doing a really good job. But the fact of the matter is, we already have applications agreed for what is going to be transitory housing and unstable housing. And that is the issue.
It's a journey, though. You can't two points. We're half an hour into this item and we do have another item. I'm conscious that it's getting towards 9 o'clock. Can I also say that I think if attendance has been poor, I think you've got the perfect member to join your group. That may be an internal matter for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to be fair, there is a reason why the Labour group, I just need to say this, there is a reason why, and I don't want to talk about it tonight, there is a reason why it's sort of fallen by the wayside with the Labour group, okay? But I think that you probably need to speak to Gareth, and you need to, either yourself or somebody else needs to be vested in coming and attending the meetings, because I think what you're saying is absolutely right, but it is a journey. You're not going to change it overnight. So patience is the virtue.
And that allows more time for a wider discussion around the whole idea of permitted developments. This week, we've seen another district council lose its planning power on 10 dwellings plus because of its decisions taken. So, you know, our hands are tied on that. We've got to create the environment which draws in what we want rather than finding other ways we can stop what we don't. With one last speaker, and then we'll see if Emma wants to come back in. We've got Councillor Stone, Councillor Beardsworth, and then we'll come back to Emma. And stay there, Emma, if you like. Don't,
Chair, very exciting document to read, and I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the meeting the other day. I did try on the phone and various methods, but hopefully we're going back to actually coming together, and that will make it a lot easier. I was looking at page, we've got a page on here, 03 and analyst, analysis.
Sorry, what page?
Well, 03 analysis, history contents. And if you go back to the 16th century, you'll see that Abington Street was bounded on both sides by housing. But it did have the added advantage of having no less than 12 ale houses as well, which actually, if you think about it, if you have nice restaurants and nice houses, let's try and do it with a bit of class, you know, so people come here and actually see the town centre, not as something with people staggering around drunk, but of people actually bringing their children and sitting in restaurants that can spill out onto the streets in the summer months and have the sort of continental style that we all hanker for when we go abroad. And it doesn't always have to be, you can have indoor facilities, you can have outdoor facilities, and you can make it a much nicer place. Not so many nightclubs and maybe on the periphery, so that you don't get that awful view when you go into town on a Friday night of people staggering about the place and not really making the place look nice for people to go into and take their children. And I think if you look at it, if you do more residential and more restaurants and maybe less retail, because let's face it, we've had 3 years of buying online. And the actual things that you can buy online now are so vast that it's very difficult to actually get shops to come into the town and have the same amount of stock that you would have online. And I know it, but we all knew this was going to happen. The government were told probably 40 years ago when IT came into its being that eventually it will be, retail will not be as we know it 10 years ago. It will not be the same. And we won't be able to encourage big stores to come here because we tried that last time. You can never get the big boys here like John Lewis because you've got them at Milton Keynes. So what you've got to do is go for niche stuff that people can see. You've got a university, you've got a college, an arts college. You could encourage people to start businesses there, those sort of things, small little niche businesses.
I think
do
that's
retail.
fully agreed, cross-party, that's definitely the strategy, the direction we're going.
guess
Thank
so.
you, Sally.
So
Everything you've said, Sally,
yes,
is where we're heading.
that's good because we're going back to the 16th century. But that isn't a bad thing as long as
No.
we don't have the plague. Okay?
Yeah, yeah. So thank you. I'm glad you've concurred with what we're doing. It's the
Well,
right thing.
I read all my papers, you know, for the regeneration
Good,
town thing, even if we
good.
don't get together.
And next time, take my number so I know that you can't.
Don't worry,
get in.
I shall be at Angel Square hopefully next.
Brilliant. Okay, so, but Emma, you've got some remaining comments to make.
Thank you. And I won't repeat anything my colleagues have said, and I appreciate everything they did say. There's just a couple of points that I highlighted in the document that weren't covered, and I feel a bit inferior because I'm no good at jokes, and everybody's cracking them tonight, and I am not able to do that. So there's some financial risks referenced within the report, and those are referenced around risks losing external funding and faces increased costs within projects through not being able to undertake appropriate due diligence. And it doesn't just apply to this project, Lizzie. I think we've seen that in other reports that we've got. What is the real risk? And do we as an authority understand the risk of us losing funding that we've been donated, that we've obtained, not donated, that we've obtained because we can't deliver or we're not able to action? I requested a point last cabinet from Councillor Lara around the active travel fund and what the risks were of losing that. So it'd be really good if we could have an understanding of what our losses might be and what the consequences of that would be. And then also, I also love your enthusiasm. And whenever you present the report, you've always clearly done all of your homework. But for me, they're all in silos, they're all on their own. And I just wonder if these project teams have spoken to the Market Square project team, and if the Market Square project team has spoken to the museum project team, and actually if we've had a look at the infrastructure that we need to get all of those projects working together in harmonisation, just if that makes sense, and the environmental impact this kind of work, which is beautiful, can have on our area and other areas. And how do we link Delapre Abbey, for example, in my ward, which you eloquently talked about, and the CEO's made some brilliant changes over these last 2 years. But how do we link that up? You know, on Heritage Bus Tour Day, then the bus goes from the town centre to Delapre Abbey, but that doesn't happen regularly. So why not? How do we link those projects together and make that infrastructure work? And then it's a bane of my life at the moment with these reports. The climate impact report is 3 lines long. Yeah, and this is potentially some pedestrianisation, some harmonisation of structures. There's tree planting going on, which will have obviously a climate impact, and there's 3 lines in the report. I think we really need to understand the environmental impact of these projects. Thank you.
So last one first, climate impact report. When we get to the next stage, detailed plan, in the specs, it is one of the criteria. Okay, and as I said, in the sourcing and the contracts that we use for each project, that is absolutely, will be clearly defined. We're just a little bit early on at the moment, but fair comment. Second of all, in terms of the link, as I mentioned, I have asked for a proper project plan of all of the projects that are undergoing at the moment. Who are the key personnel, even our consultants, so I can keep an eye on who it is outside and how they link in. I want to know names. I want to know names of everybody. Yeah. And I want to know who's doing what and how much they're doing and how they're communicating with each other. The next stage is linking it in with, and that's why I mentioned the Delapre Abbeys of this world and the museums, how it links into that. And that is in the things to do list, and Stuart and I are working on it, and that will be communicated with time. Stuart's got a lot on his plate at the moment, so I'm trying to be patient. I'm not a patient person. I'd like this all done in the next 2 years, but it's not going to be. I have to be patient. Okay. And what was the other one? Risk. Well, we just, you know, not doing this is not negotiable as far as I'm concerned, and I will make damn sure that we do it. There is a risk. If we do not do this, then the money goes back. Simple, end of. So it's our credibility. It's everybody's credibility here tonight. It's everybody's credibility at WNC, and it's the credibility of our county, particularly West North Hants, if we do not do this. So we have to make damn sure that we are going to do it, and we will do it.
I hear you. I'd just like to see a report of all of those risks collectively.
Okay, so if
what
you
that
go
challenge
into,
is.
yeah, so the risks, there is a risk assessment in each Hatch report.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Brown, the risks of all the projects that we've got running, not the risks of each individual report, but how much funding did we get awarded for each project, and which one of those pots of funding is able to be removed from us or has to be taken back if we don't fulfill certain criteria. And we should, in my opinion, personal opinion, know what that list is. So that's not just your project. That will be lots of other projects across the council.
Okay, so
I mentioned the active travel
register.
one.
We have a risk register. Every council has a full risk register, and through the Capital and Assets Board, we're constantly reviewing that risk register. So that is, you know, the whole entirety of all the projects and assets. That is where it is held. But every project that I'm dealing with has a risk register, absolutely critical. We're on a timeline here. We have to use this money within a certain amount of time, and I will be pushing to make sure it is.
Brilliant. I'll have a look at both the documents and I'll see if it does
there's
what
any
I
gaps,
think, and then I'll give you a
Going
shout
back
if
to
not.
my other point, bring it to the oversight, the subgroup, not you yourself personally, but whoever you delegate while we've got this issue going on. Just at the moment, because we have to be patient with that, don't we? Whoever it is that you decide to bring, you need to feed back. As a group, you need to feed into them so that they can bring it to us.
It's not about that oversight board, Lizzie. It's about the projects with council as an overall. So I'll look at whether the documents you referenced do it, and then I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Anne. It's helpful. Thank you, Lizzie. Tremendous. Does any member of cabinet have any other questions or comments? Phil, you want to chip in?
Just a couple of points. I'd welcome the opportunity to meet with Lizzie and look at how disabled parking, and I declare an interest as a blue badge holder. I'm not too sure of the situation at the bottom of Abington Street where there's currently parking, what's happening there. But I think it might be good for Lizzie and I to sit down and look at that.
Great.
And then perhaps consider taking out all the pay bays and putting in blue badge parking further around, because unfortunately over the last 12 months, 2 years, no end of facilities have been taken away. And that was, as you know, reflected by the Disabled People's Forum. And secondly, one of the big issues I had, Chair, the statue, Francis Crick, if you remember, it's floodlit, but the floodlighting wasn't on any maintenance contract. And I think it took me about a year to get it repaired. Had to jump through all sorts of different hoops to get it fixed. Can we use this as an opportunity to get the lighting sorted out and put on a proper maintenance contract? So if it goes out within 24 hours, it's repaired. Perhaps we could have that conversation outside.
Couple of good things there to discuss,
I just
isn't
wanted to make those two issues, Chair.
Just one final point. In terms of lighting, we've got some really amazing super duper lighting plans in progress, if you like. So completely get where you're coming from, and we can bring that into it. And you and I need to keep talking. And I completely get the whole disability thing because, you know, the train station, you highlighted that issue, which has now been sorted. But yeah, we need to make sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent points. I think that's probably it. So if I may, I'll direct your attention to the recommendations, page 330. Just ask you to confirm your agreement. Is that agreed? Thank you. That's terrific. That takes us on to our last item, which is item 12. This is with Mike, People Strategy. Mike will do a quick introduction. Then we've got three speakers, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Stone and Councillor Harris. Mike, over to you.
Sure, I'll be brief as I'm conscious we've still got three speakers, as you say. This is a working document and I believe it will continue and should continue to evolve. I did just want to thank Alison, our Assistant Director, ably assisted by Mitch, one of our fantastic project managers who are here and have pulled this all together. I think they've done a really good job. We obviously made a positive announcement earlier about money, but for me, it's not just about money. It's actually about our overall attitude and approach as an employer. Just to summarise what I think that is, I think there's three key things to that really from my perspective, which is, you know, if you need to pick up your kids from school and we can accommodate that, well, we'll let you have flexible working. If you're on holiday, you know, this is a message to everybody in the organisation really. If you're on holiday, please don't log into your email or answer your phone. You know, enjoy your holiday, rest up. And finally, the most pertinent one of all, I guess, is if you're sick and you're coughing and spluttering around the place, then definitely don't come into the office to try and be that old school office hero that came in and was like, look at my badge of honour, I'm coughing all over the place. Please don't come in, you know, stay home, get well. That's really my comments on this. I think the Thrive values are really, really important. They're all in the document. So conscious of the hour, we'll move to the speakers, if that's okay, Leader.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Our first speaker then is Emma. Councillor Roberts, over to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Hallam. I really like it. I've spoken to Sarah and her teams about how this looks, and I really like the concept. I think if we can harness this and make sure that it goes across all of the authority employees, then it's a really good start. Couple of small points. I know you work really closely with the trade unions. I know Sarah and her teams do, but in the whole document, the reference is only there twice. So I know there's more work than that being done, and I think that should be reflective within the document there. I was told that so many of our areas still feel disjointed, and I've had some meetings with different officers on site for different things over the last few weeks, and I really felt that from them, that people still feel incredibly disjointed and that the officers from different areas don't feel part of a team yet. I've not got a solution for that, but I just think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, that they are telling me that services aren't quite there. They're not using the same systems or unable to access the same documentation as their colleague who might have been dealing with it 5 minutes earlier. And that's a real problem. And that for me is something that we've really got to get to grips with as quickly as possible as part of that transformation project. I also understand the survey results showed, and forgive me if I've got it wrong, but I believe they showed a really uneven picture across the authority of how people felt. So again, I think we've got to continue to work, and I'm not suggesting Councillor Hallam or the teams aren't working on that, but they're our greatest asset, aren't they, our people? And at the moment, I feel like our transformation achievements are potentially not doing them the service that they deserve, or giving them the service that they deserve. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Some good points there. Do you want to comment, Mike? Some stuff to keep running with after this, isn't there, on that? But
yeah, and definitely some themes there. I think you've actually touched on one of the key points, which is how HR and IT culture and IT go hand in glove together, because it is really important that everyone's working on the same system with the same level of service to the public or to whoever it might be. I guess in those individual examples, you know, tell me, in my first week in this job, someone was fixing my laptop and they were having a bit of a moan about the IT department. He said, oh, I'm really sorry. I just realized I shouldn't tell you. And I said, you absolutely should. Anybody should be able to tell anybody else in this organization something else. So what I need is I can't have people making anecdotal kind of comments. I've got to have evidence behind it. So if people are happy to share, I've offered other councillors the opportunity when they've said they've had, you know, they knew of someone that was crying at work. If they're happy to have a one-to-one confidential meeting with me, it will go no further. You know, I'll meet with people individually. We can have other officers do it, other councillors. We can do it however we want. If we, you know, we really want to put an arm around people and make sure they're happy in the new organisation. It will still take time because some people are still going to the office that they went to, doing the tasks that they went to before. So my plea is, you know, if there is further detail that you can share, tell me and we'll wrap an arm around these people as much as we can.
Chair, just for clarity, for Councillor Hallam's clarity, this wasn't officers saying they had a specific problem. This was them explaining a problem to me that we were unable to fix as a result of that disjointed working. So I haven't got any detail to give you about an individual's complaint because they weren't complaining, they were demonstrating the problem exists, that's all. So you won't hear from me with additional detail because it wasn't individual complaints.
Yeah, no, thank you, Emma. Thank you very much indeed. Danielle is next.
Thank you very much. I wanted to speak to welcome the report. I think it's absolutely what we need. I kept thinking as I turned over the pages, I wonder what my next question will be. And I thought about it and then I found the answers. So that for me is a really, really good report. And it's presented beautifully. But what it signals for me is something really, really important, and that is the intent to transform the culture that we are working in to an enabling culture, away from a bullying culture, which I think we experience in some of the predecessor authorities, to a much more collaborative culture where we care about each other, where we build trust between each other, and we stop that awful habit of micromanaging, which I think is a feature of bullying. It's kind of passive aggressive, isn't it? And we build that trust up. Now, of course, that is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. And we have to show our intent around that. So not just in policies, but in actual fact, the way we all behave towards each other. So I think we've got some good examples of that we can hold up as examples for other people and for our staff and for people in public. And the development of the anti-poverty strategy is a really good example of that, which is cross-party, it's collaborative, where all ideas are welcome and really respectfully received. And I think by setting those examples, you know, we can say to people, we are really serious. We're going to have a creative, a collaborative, a forward-looking organisation, and we have to do it all together.
Thank you.
One other thing, sorry.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is missing for me from the document is an appreciation of the other additional skills that people bring to work with them. So we have the job description and the skills matching to do with that. But people often bring other skills with them into the organisation, and they are often overlooked. So a very obvious example is language skills. I bet we've got loads of staff who speak lots of other languages, and that should be seen as a resource within our staff set. And we need to know about it. We need to know about it. I'm curious about things like that, but I think it's a selling point for our organisation. And there'll be lots of other examples of that as well.
Really good. Thank you. Any comment, Mike?
Yeah, it's partly how we deal with employees and moving away from that. The council has an annual appraisal to tick the box with each employee, because that's what we need to do. It's moving into a much more collaborative approach to people. The language example is a good one. Other ones are, you know, there's officers I know that do football coaching at the weekend, and there's leadership skills and all sorts of skills that are developed. So we've got to tease out those skills and get those people, bringing them to the party, because there are lots and lots of skills that we can bring. We just need to use them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Danielle. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Mindful of the hour. Again, I welcome very much this document and the content, specifically because it's starting to outline clearly an employee life cycle and hopefully build a strong employer brand for the council specifically. My only comment, I wouldn't use the word criticism, but observation, is I think it would benefit from some more specific targets and timelines. It's very aspirational, clearly, which is very welcome, but I would be very interested, obviously, in due course, to see more detail behind the wish list, if you like, so that we can be clear that, like other projects, or initiatives under portfolio areas, we can be clear that we're keeping on top of them. But that's just a general observation more than anything else. One comment specifically, I'm sure we've all read the reports in NN Journal about issues of accuracy of staff numbers in the north. And I note that our staff numbers are reported in here as a general question. Are we confident that this is an accurate picture for us? Because that's been quite a contentious one for the north. And then obviously the key thing, it's been mentioned a couple of times in regards to this report, all of the stuff that we talked about this evening can't be done and delivered without the right people with the right skill sets, attitudes, and all the rest of it. What it doesn't talk about in any great shakes is the management of turnover. Now, clearly this is about future aspirational, but I'm very interested to know where we are currently in regards to labour turnover and what patterns we're seeing, because obviously that can be quite a useful indicator for us overall. So specific question about where we're at in regards to those levels currently. How might that compare to similar councils? So again, just so that we're doing some sort of benchmarking as much as anything else between us and others. And specifically, what do we expect those pressure points to be? We've talked in the past at some of the cabinet meetings about some challenges for recruiting particular roles. And I think we need to be very focused on that to make sure that we are keeping on top of those particular issues. And final area really is the survey is great, and we've touched on that before in previous reports. Can I also be assured that we're doing some qualitative research as well? So it's not just based on survey completion, but it is also based on dialogue and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Some excellent points there. Mike, do you want to comment?
On the last point, 100%. Yeah, you can't just rely on survey detail because obviously not everybody fills the survey in. And the more you send out surveys, we have actually only done one as West Northants, but the more you send it out, the less response you get. So you absolutely have to manage that. In terms of the projects behind this, it is backed by a detailed project plan where it's got 50 key projects on it, which back that up as well. So there is detailed work going on behind this to back it up. This is just a presentation of the overall message. Are we confident in the numbers? Yeah, as confident as we can be. And on turnover patterns, turnover is a really difficult one at the moment to judge and compare because we're a brand new organisation, but we're a brand new organisation that was founded during the middle of the biggest health pandemic since just after the end of the First World War. So a turnover is a difficult one, but we'll do some benchmarking as we move forward and come out of the pandemic.
Okay, brilliant. Jonathan, thank you. Thank you for the points you've raised. Okay, that's the last of our speakers. Any cabinet member have any further comments or questions to raise? No? No? In which case, it's recommended that we approve the People Strategy and support its implementation across the council. Certainly very happy to do that myself. Can I ask you to confirm your agreement, please, to that? That's excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who's worked hard to bring papers to us and cabinet members who've supported those. It's been an excellent meeting. Can we particularly thank the finance team who've had an awful lot to do over the last few months. And we thank the scrutiny for their work on that. I think we can really chalk that up as a collaborative success. Thank you very much, everybody.